Chapter 1456. While they were talking, Jin Xian Guan Duo had already checked the environment and confirmed that there were no hidden traps. They didn't give Jiang Wang a chance to delay any longer and acted together. As Guqing raised his hand, the insect tide covered the sky and covered the earth. Those little gray insects had slender and sharp mouthparts, wings connected to thin feet like bats. But they were only the size of an adult's finger. Connected together, they made an ear-piercing sound similar to iron scraping against stone. That sound seemed to drill into people's brain. They echoed with each other, making people panic, making people crazy. Their hearts also seemed to split apart. The densely packed little gray insects followed some kind of order in the chaos, vibrating in unison, controlling the sound to kill. This heart-piercing insect was a secret technique of the Gu family, the beginning of the Five Chaos. It had all kinds of dangers, not limited to one sense. But at this moment, to cooperate with Wu Ling, there was nothing more suitable than this chaotic sound to kill the heart. And in front of Wu Ling, the long scroll of literary qi floated and rolled, like a general platform, horizontally in front of him. He held the brush of literary qi in his hand, like he was holding the arrow of command. His body was straight like a spear, like he was commanding thousands of troops and horses. Rivers and mountains were in his eyes, thousands of troops were waiting. The brush of literary qi finally fell, so the military order had been sent out. A very hurried, wryed character jumped out from the long scroll of literary qi impatiently, turning into a black-armored rider. He had reined in the horse for a long time. His power was like thunder, holding the 2-foot-long lance. He leaped forward. Then there was a sharp blade character, jumping out of the long scroll of literary qi, turning into an armored soldier holding a blade, taking a few steps in the air, chasing after the black-armored rider on the right side to protect his wings. The body in front, the blade behind, hiding a murderous intent. Then there was a steady bow character. This character was really like Mount Tai, steady and steady. It slowly walked out in the air above the long scroll of literary qi, turning into a fierce soldier holding a bow. Just as it took shape, the bow was instantly bent like a full moon. The fingers loosened. Taut. With a trembling sound, the bowstring was still moving, the arrow had already shot out. But before the charging black-armored rider, it whistled through the air, heading straight for the space between Jiang Wang's eyebrows. The world was vast and filled with all sorts of strange things. The world was vast and there were countless daos, skills, and abilities. Whether it was Gu Feng or Wu Ling, their methods could be said to have broadened Jiang Wang's horizons. As the saying goes, taming insects like an army, the so-called militarist Confucian combination. However, Jiang Wang was expressionless. He had long since proven that he was strong enough to face anyone in the mountain and sea realm. Gu Feng and Wu Ling could not help but think, if Jiang Wang had already discovered their ambush, then in the battle with Do Zhao, would he have held back? Was it possible that it was just a show? Could the identity of the hunter and the hunted still be determined? Yu Tianyu spun around on Maharaga's massive left palm, his face radiating a brass-colored luster, expressionlessly facing Gu Tu and the other man. He clasped his palms together and prepared to make a move. However, Jiang Wang said, "Yu Tianyu, stand down." Yu Tianyu could not believe it. She even suspected that she had misheard. First, facing Gu Fei Wu Ling, although her injuries had not healed and her strength was less than 30%, she was still a great help. Was Jiang Wang so arrogant that he wanted her to face him? His injuries had not healed either. Second, why would Jiang Wang use such a commanding tone to speak to her, treating her like a subordinate? It must be understood that with her identity, status, and background, even in the Duke of Yu's estate, no one dared to be disrespectful to her. As her thoughts raced, the mechanical Korogia had already retreated with her in tow. She felt that since Jiang Wang would not speak like this, then Jiang Wang must have his reasons. She chose to cooperate. Jiang Wang had been sitting cross-legged on top of Maharaga's head. Maharaga retreated, but he did not move. Thus he sat in midair. At this moment, his face was tired, the filth on his clothes had not yet disappeared, and the stench on his body had not yet dispersed. He sat there so weakly, but with a light stretch of his hand, he caught the sharp arrow that was hurtling toward him. The line of fire in his hand burned, and it immediately burned into smoke. His left hand was held in the white smoke. A sword was held across his knees. Suddenly, a cry came from the scabbard. Clang! Just this one sound. 10,000 sounds came. The immortal's edict said, "Kill immediately." In front of Gutu, those little gray insects fell like rain and died instantly. Gutu was shocked and angry, but also pained. Although there were many of these piercing heart goo, they were not too precious individually. However, such a large number of deaths was enough to dry up his wallet, especially since the piercing heart goo's true killing power had not yet been unleashed. They had died too suddenly, and there was no time to retrieve them. If he had known that Jiang Wang had such control of the Tao of sound, he definitely would not have used the piercing heart goo. In the end, Jiang Wang's 8 sounds burning the sea, which was widely known, was based on fire, with sound as support. He had not seen such control of sound. Of course, it was too late to say anything now. The densely packed insect corpses were the price he should pay for his wrong judgment. At this moment, Wu Ling's black-armored cavalry and sword-wielding armored soldiers had already arrived. The cavalry spear was heavy, the blade flashing. Jiang Wang did not even look. He only breathed out, and a wisp of white wind flew out. It split into two and blew apart the black-armored cavalry and sword-wielding armored soldiers. What made people wary was not that he could defeat these methods, but that he appeared so relaxed. Jiang Wang picked up his long sword and stood up in midair. He looked at Gutu and Wu Ling. He opened his mouth and spat out a large ball of smelly black blood. It formed a blood net in the air and leapt towards the two people. A fishy wind blew over and a stench hit them. Gutu casually waved his hand. A group of rotting flies with translucent tails swarmed out. The antennae on their foreheads swayed wildly and instantly devoured the black blood. However, in the blink of an eye, they all withered and fell to the ground. His ugly face had an even uglier expression. The black butterfly resting on his shoulder was about to rise. "I treated you with respect, but you were so aggressive." Jiang Wang did not hide his injuries. "You bully me because I am heavily injured and want to see my foundation? Even the 5 blights of celestial beings could not kill me, you think you can? Just now it was the 5 blights? No wonder the rotting flies could not survive even though they swallowed poison to survive." However, what shocked Wu Ling even more was, Jiang Wang had actually survived the 5 blights of celestial beings. His heart shook, but his face did not show any expression. Wu Ling only said, "There is no harm in trying. Use whatever methods you have." Gutu also sneered. They had already lost so many insects. If they returned without any results, it would be too much of a loss. Gutu and Wu Ling both had fighting spirit. However, Jiang Wang's fighting spirit was even stronger, his killing intent even heavier. "The world knows me as Tianfu, who has seen my 5 divine powers." He waved his hand and grabbed the orange song jade annulus from Zhuo Guangshu's body. He put it on himself. "You Tiannu, take Guangshu away. I do not need help. Those who have seen my divine powers, all have to die." These words were too cold. Yu Tiannu also seemed to be shocked. He casually used 3 Buddhist techniques on Jiang Wang. One was the mercy mantra to recover physical strength. One was the wind returning mantra to increase speed. One was the Vajra mantra to increase physical defense. Then he controlled Maharaga to turn around and leave without looking back to show that he would not peek. Even Yu Tiannu, who came from a famous sect with high cultivation and an extraordinary background, listened to Jiang Wang's words. He did not even dare to look at this divine powers. This was enough to show its power. From Jiang Wang's tone, this was a terrifying divine powers that even Dou Zhao had never seen before. However, Wu Ling's expression did not change. He only raised his brush like a knife. With a wave of his brush, he wrote the word, General. A heavily armored general came out with a blade in hand and hovered in front of Wu Ling. The general was the courage of the soldiers. He said emotionally, "If I can see your foundation, Jiang Qingyang, what regrets would I have if I died today?" If this was when he had just entered the mountain sea realm, Wu Ling would not even say these words. However, after Jiang Wang fought with Dou Zhao and did not die from the 5 blights of celestial beings, Wu Ling had to admit that if Jiang Wang was at his peak, he might not be a match for him. There was indeed a possibility that he would be killed, because he definitely could not withstand Dou Zhao's 5 blights of celestial beings. Even in his previous fights with Dou Zhao, he had never reached the point of witnessing the 5 blights of celestial beings. How many people in the mountain sea realm could defeat Dou Zhao and not die when he was at full strength? At least, Wu Ling could not think of a second person. Jiang Wang used his real battle results to prove the weight of his words. Wu Ling had to give Jiang Wang the same amount of respect as he feared Dou Zhao. This world was boundless and vast, but sometimes it was very narrow. When it was vast, it could contain everything. When it was narrow, only the strong and the weak were judged. At this moment, Jiang Wang only asked very calmly, "Do you know how to kill people in the mountain sea realm?" Both Wu Ling and Gufeng were shocked. Everyone knew how to kill people. However, Jiang Wang's question was not so simple. The killing he was talking about was not eliminating people and then cutting off 30% of their soul source. He was talking about crossing the rules of the mountain sea realm and truly erasing a person from the world. Gufeng forced a smile and then realized that his smile was not natural. "Do you know how to?" It was still the same words. If he had just entered the mountain sea realm, he would have scoffed at Jiang Wang. However, it was different now. This Jiang Wang was someone who could face Dou Zhao head-on. He could create many possibilities. His strength caused his words to carry a lot of weight. Jiang Wang only said calmly, "Have you seen North Xiang and Tai Yin? When you leave the mountain sea realm, why don't you see if Tai Yin is still there?" He took the initiative to walk forward. "If you can still leave." Gufeng and Wu Ling involuntarily took a step back. Jiang Wang was too scary. People like them were not afraid of battle. When necessary, they would not lack the courage to burn their lives. However, in the mountain sea realm, was it worth it to die silently and without a ripple? They had the jade disc in their hands and had many opportunities to gain. Would they risk being erased for a new jade disc? This kind of death was lighter than a feather. They could not doubt Jiang Wang's words, because when they set up the trap, they had considered many candidates. However, in Wu Ling's mountain river disc, there had been no traces of North Xiang and Tai Yin for a long time, because Jiang Wang was an expert who could face Dou Zhao and escape unscathed. Because people like Yu Tiannu were willing to be ordered around by him. North Xiang and Tai Yin were very likely killed by Jiang Wang and erased from the world. With the grudge between Qi and Xia, and the conflict between Zhuo Guangshu and North Xiang, this was not hard to understand. No, Wu Ling just had a feeling that something was wrong. Jiang Wang said again, "Of course, I did not kill North Xiang. After all, I still want to leave Chu alive. North Xiang is not qualified to see all 5 of my abilities." He looked at Wu Ling and said, "For the same reason, Wu Ling, I should not kill you. However, facing you in this state, I have no choice but to use my ultimate ability. However, if I use that ability, how can I not kill you?" He sighed with some pain. Wu Ling, you have given me a difficult problem." Guqing felt his throat dry up. Jiang Wang was only talking about Wu Ling. Of course, he knew why. After all, he could be completely obliterated, and with how weak the state of Yu was compared to the state of Qi, Jiang Chun didn't have any misgivings. Just like Tai Yin, who had been killed. What Wu Ling cared about more was that even Dou Zhao could not see all 5 of Jiang Wang's abilities. How strong was Jiang Wang? What kind of terrifying ability needed to be hidden like this? What kind of ability was it that would kill anyone who saw it? Could they see Jiang Wang's 5 abilities? This was a matter of life and death. Gucheng and Wu Ling looked at each other and saw each other's heavy emotions. They were the ones who set the trap, the Oriole who used the inspiration worm to create the opportunity for the ambush. Why was it Jiang Wang who was forcing them now? They felt it was absurd, but they had to face reality. They had planned painstakingly and gathered people before they dared to set the trap. However, Jiang Wang had fought against Dou Zhao with real swords and spears. This was the attitude a strong person should have. I promised Guangxu to help him get what he wants. Therefore, I will do my best. However, I do not want to be enemies with the Wu family and Dai and Chu. Jiang Wang looked at Wu Ling and said calmly, "Therefore, I am willing to give you another chance to choose." He did not purposely use a fierce tone. Instead, he was very gentle and let the other choose life or death. The atmosphere was somber. There was great terror between life and death. A lifetime of struggle turned into bubbles. Everything that they once loved and cared about was gone in an instant. Who would not feel regret, who would not feel fear? Therefore, even people like Wu Ling and Gucheng who dared to set the trap couldn't help but hesitate before making such a choice. Dou Zhao was invincible in Chu. This was a reputation that he had forged through battle after battle. Only by crushing all opponents could he become the strongest. Other than Zhong Lian, who thought about killing him all day, no one in the younger generation of Chu was unconvinced. Even someone like Zhong Lian admitted that he had no chance of defeating Dou Zhao on the current path, and could only cultivate the martial path and participate in the development of new paths. They dared to set the trap largely because this was the Mountain Sea realm. They would not be killed. At worst, they would lose 30% of their soul source. The price was expensive, but with their family wealth, they could barely afford it. But now, Jiang Wang proposed an even worse choice. How to choose. The silence did not last long. "I believe in you." In the end, Wu Ling said, "I believe that Yu Beta's praise has its reason. I believe that the winner of the Battle of the Yellow River will be Du Yaoxinghe. I believe that to be able to withstand Dou Zhao's celestial decay, your strength is above mine. I believe that a peerless Tianjiao like you can find a way to surpass the rules of the Mountain Sea realm. I believe that you may have really killed Tai Yin." He held the brush and said firmly, "But I don't believe it either. I don't believe that I, Wu Ling, am trash. I don't believe that my years of hard work are so weak that they cannot withstand the wind and rain. I don't believe that you, who were heavily injured by Dou Zhao, can turn the tables and defeat me with a hidden technique." He wrote the word "army" on the long scroll of literary qi with a single stroke. Soldiers with swords and bows came out in a single file. One by one, they lined up behind the heavily armored general. Literary energy rose above his head and shone for thousands of miles. Wu Ling's gaze was determined as he said, "If I am really that weak, then I deserve to die. I should not waste the resources of the Wu family and occupy the name of Chu. Please, Jiang Qingyang, kill me here and get rid of evil for Chu." The literary energy soldiers and the heavily armored general formed a military formation and roared like a dragon. "Well said." Gu Feng looked at Jiang Wang and his gaze became firm. "I almost lost my will. Today, I will live and die with Brother Wu. I will use this body to see the hero of De Qi." The black butterfly on his shoulder flew up. As the butterfly wings trembled, 5-colored flowing light appeared. It was like a dream. Jiang Wang smiled ferociously. Sword energy soared into the sky. He stepped on the ground and green clouds appeared. He turned and ran. Chapter 1457. Wu Ling, Gufeng, Wu Ling had really made a great decision. He had summoned the courage to cross the line between life and death before he decided to continue. Gufeng was also unwilling to admit defeat. He was even more unwilling to watch his friend die alone. That was why he decided to risk his life. They were facing Jiang Wang with the same attitude as they faced Dou Zhao. Even when Jiang Wang was laughing viciously, Gufeng unconsciously pressed a defensive Dao technique. The 7 profound tortoise shell in front of him at this moment was a Dao technique masterpiece with great defensive ability. It was thick and sturdy. Presumably, it could block Dou Zhao's blade. But right now, he really felt like a tortoise. Shrinking back like a coward, it was laughable. Wu Ling's eyes were red. He had put his illustrious birth and limitless bright future behind him. He had the awareness that he would be completely obliterated. He was fighting for honor. At this moment, his literary aura scroll was still floating in front of him. He used literary aura to combine with fiendish aura to form a military formation. This was a killing technique that he would not easily show to others. Right now, he was still charging. But the opponent did not even turn his head. Jiang Wang ran very quickly. He also paid great attention to his posture. If it was not for the stench still spreading out, one could really see that he was somewhat dashing. And he clearly chose the escape route after careful observation. He nimbly avoided the few places that were most likely to have Jinji set up. Suddenly left, suddenly right, extremely smooth. The sword aura was still there, but the green clouds had already dispersed. One moment, he was still laughing viciously. The next moment, he had escaped without a trace. Wu Ling only felt that something was broken. It was his dignity and face that was hard to get back. Literary aura combined with fiendish aura. The military formation turned into a dragon, roaring as it chased after him. Wu Ling stepped on the literary aura scroll and flew behind him. Don't let this kid escape. He gritted his teeth, his voice trembling slightly. If today's matter was spread out, and people knew that he, Wu Ling, was frightened by a seriously injured Jiang Wang, he would not know how to face people. Gufeng's face was also red with embarrassment. He directly opened his specially made insect pouch. His left foot and right foot stepped on a flying insect, silently following behind Wu Ling. And Jiang Wang was actually also very helpless. It wasn't that he didn't want to go all out, but even if he did, he wouldn't be able to win. No matter if it was Wu Ling or Gu Shuo, they were both outstanding talents of their country. Yu country wasn't weak, much less Great Chu. To be able to stand out in these two countries, how was he going to fight with such injuries? The chi of 5 decrees in his body had yet to dissipate, and the true samadhi fire was still burning. He had even vomited a few liters of blood. Furthermore, sword immortal, sound immortal, and even wind chaser, cape, and perish god had all been used. He would not be able to use them again in a short period of time. He had used his ethereal wind again and again, so he didn't have much left. How were they supposed to fight in such a situation? He couldn't think of a solution. He could only use Dou Zhao's tiger skin and say that he wasn't even afraid of Dou Zhao. He could only use an unrealized idea to trick him. Once Gutu and Wu Ling were convinced, he would guide them to kill Dou Zhao. At least Dou Zhao would not be able to break the rules of the mountain and sea realm to kill people, right? He didn't expect that Wu Lingxin believed him and actually had a broken heart. He was too honest. Other than running away, Lord Jiang had no other choice. As he flew, he burned the 5 decay chi and coughed up blood. He suddenly thought in his mind, based on Wu Ling's fear of Dou Zhao, he shouldn't be the only group to set up a trap for Dou Zhao. Who was the other group? A glorious battle ended, and the sky poured down again. In fact, it was even more intense than before, as if it was a form of revenge. When it hit the body, broken jade flowed like pearls. Dou Zhao laughed wildly in the rain, laughing that he had met an interesting opponent, laughing that this trip had not been in vain. until Zhong Lian and Fan Wushu walked over one after the other. They crashed into the rain. Ha 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 ha! Zhong Lian continued Dou Zhao's wild laughter. You didn't expect it, right? I'm here. Dou Zhao stopped laughing and lightly shook his long knife. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Why did it take so long? He was clearly the one who had been set up, clearly the one who had been ambushed, but he acted aggressive and unusually picky. What? The battle hasn't ended, and you don't dare to enter? Zhong Lian, have you already lost the courage to face me? Bullsh *t. Zhong Lian immediately cursed. This is called wisdom. Courage and wisdom, how can a brute like you understand? Dou Zhao smiled faintly. You've redefined this word. Zhong Lian spat. Stop putting on an act. You're scared that I'm here, aren't you? And you're pretending that you've already discovered me? Ha ha ha, what a joke, I didn't leave any loopholes for you. Although I always knew that you were overconfident. Dou Zhao shook his head helplessly and said, I followed Zhuo Guangshu's traces here, but they wouldn't have left such obvious traces. Isn't that a loophole? Humph. Zhong Lian forced himself to say, You fell into my trap, that's the truth. It's useless to quibble. Since you know it's a trap, Fan Wushu asked at this time, Brother Dou, why did you still step in? Dou Zhao grinned with indescribable confidence. It's nothing more than meeting a trap and breaking it. Meeting an ambush and breaking the ambush. I'm only afraid that I won't be able to find you. I'm not afraid of what you'll do. Who in the mountain sea realm can kill me? Fan Wushu was speechless for a moment. Zhong Lian took off the heavy sword on his back and gripped it in his hand. He said fiercely, I can kill you. I'm curious. I want to know the answer before you die. Dou Zhao pointed his blade at the two of them and asked, Who set this trap? Zhong Lian said impatiently, I told you it was me. Dou Zhao shook his head. It wasn't you. You don't have the brains. Fan Wushu waved his fan and smiled. Looks like you found out. It wasn't you either, Dou Zhao interrupted. You don't have the ability. Fan Wushu turned to Zhong Lian and said, You're right. He emphasized, This person is really annoying. Looks like the person who set this trap went to kill Jiang Wang. Dou Zhao looked regretful. They were so arrogant that they didn't come looking for me. Did they think that you 2 pieces of scrap metal would be enough? Zhong Lian's temper flared up again. You motherf *cur, tell me clearly. What did you say we were? Dou Zhao ignored him and sighed to himself. Forget it. Let's consider this another battle between me and him. Let's see who can deal with these little problems first. The veins on Zhong Lian's forehead bulged. Your opponent is me. Dou Zhao looked at him indifferently. Do you still not understand? Zhong Lian was stunned. Understand what? Dou Zhao said indifferently, You're not worthy. Zhong Lian's bones cracked. He couldn't hold on for even half a breath. He raised his heavy sword and charged forward. Thousands of sounds merged into one. Tens of thousands of swords merged into one. The air exploded. The sword was like a roaring sea, and the body was like a falling star. You son of a bitch surnamed Dou, I've given you enough time to heal. We're even. Don't complain even if you die. He roared as he charged forward. Dou Zhao's attitude was calm. I didn't heal during this time. Because if I didn't. He jumped lightly and raised his blade. I can't feel any pressure from you. When his blade met Zhong Lian, he glanced at Fan Wushu and added, Oh, it's you guys. Boom. The long blade and the heavy sword clashed. In an instant they clashed several times. Boiling killing intent rushed into the sky and sea. Vast blood energy rushed into the clouds. Explosions sounded. The blade energy and sword energy were like dragons. What are you waiting for? In the fierce battle, Dou Zhao's blade energy circled around and surrounded Fan Wushu. Fan Wushu, who had wanted to give Zhong Lian some space to fight, had to join the battle ahead of time. 3 silhouettes rushed to the same place. fierce wind, torrential rain, and thunder, they all scattered. The people who had set this up were of course Gokuen and Wu Ling. They had used the eye worms and the mountain and river sandbox to explore the environment. They had already established a geographical advantage. Even if they didn't have everything under their control, they could at least sense the autumn wind before the cicada moves. All the Chu people participating in the mountain and sea realm saw Dou Zhao as their biggest competitor. This was the reputation that he had established by defeating all his peers and becoming invincible. However, some people chose to retreat, some chose to make peace, and some set up an ambush. Wu Ling was the latter. The most respectful way was to chase the opponent away first. Daring to attack Dou Zhao was a proof of courage and strength. However, the information was slightly wrong. They had used the inspiration worm on Jiang Wang directly. They had used a more roundabout method on Dou Zhao, choosing to create traces to guide him. This showed that their judgment of the two's strength was very different. Gokuen didn't dare to use the inspiration worm on Dou Zhao because he knew it would be discovered. However, he used it on Jiang Wang without hesitation. Their initial plan was to have Chu Shunhua, Yu Tianyu, and Zhuo Guangshu exhaust Dou Zhao's strength. Then they would put Jiang Wang into the battlefield and exhaust him. In the end, the two of them would work together with Zhong Lian and Fan Wushu to kill Dou Zhao and chase him out of the mountain and sea realm. The competition after that would depend on their own method. However, they didn't expect Jiang Wang to be able to take Dou Zhao head-on and successfully leave the battlefield. Zhong Lian always had Dou Zhao as his number one target, so they went with the flow and chose to come and kill Jiang Wang. This was a relatively reasonable distribution. Dou Zhao had more jade discs, but he was obviously stronger and harder to deal with. Of course, Wu Ling might have thought of easily killing Jiang Wang and then turning his blade to Zhong Lian and Fan Wushu. For someone like Dou Zhao, even if he was tired, it was still unknown who would win against Zhong Lian and Fan Wushu. Zhong Lian's spine had opened 20 layers, and Fan Wushu was a prodigal son who had turned over a new leaf. No matter who won or lost in the end, what was left was a mess that they could easily clean up. But now this Jiang guy was too good at running. What bullshit number 1 inner palace in history, number 1 in Qi, number 1 in Tianjiao. He was just messing around with movement techniques. To be honest, this guy's speed was actually not top-notch, but he was slippery and full of tricks. No matter how they surrounded and blocked him, they could always find a way out. The secret techniques passed down from the Immortal Palace era were too free. Especially the celestial techniques that relied on the technique interface and formed their own system. It made Jiang Wang seem to not have to worry about consumption at all, and he could ignore his injuries and always explode with speed to the limit. With Wu Ling's background, he naturally had some understanding of celestial technique. Before entering the mountain sea realm, he had paid special attention to Jiang Wang's intelligence. However, understanding was one thing, cracking it was another. He couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes, so how could he crack it? Just like that, he chased further and further away. There were several times when Wu Ling wanted to turn back and take advantage of Dou Zhao, but when he thought about it, he was really angry. The longer he chased, the more unwilling he was to let go. In fact, Jiang Wang also knew his own difficulties. Of course, the rising cloud celestial technique was incomparably wonderful. He was the most familiar with it and had the deepest comprehension. Of course, the rising cloud of good fortune was also endless, enough for him to use alone. However, the injuries on his body were there and couldn't be healed. If he couldn't stop and rest, it would only worsen step by step. That was to say, the true Samadhi fire had already blocked the 5 decay chi from burning, so he didn't have to pay attention. Otherwise, he would already be drinking tea at Duke Huai Public House. Wu Ling and Gufeng were not weak. He had also used all his means to not become a prisoner. He had schemed several times to break away from the pursuit, but it was easily resolved. He wanted to hand over the jade pendant to make peace. These two bastards were rude people and didn't respond to him at all. Other than burying his head and running, there was really no other way. He could only see if his body could hold on until then, until the sword immortal and the sound immortal state both recovered. At this point, he could only compete with toughness. The three Buddhist techniques that Yu Tiannu had casually cast had a great effect, and the technique interface that the cloud-top immortal palace in Jiang Wang's body sent out continuously, the seemingly inexhaustible starlight of the Alioth Star Tower, and the profound and majestic Tao essence that he had accumulated were all his support. Enduring the pain and staying awake was something he had always been doing. He didn't know if his body could hold on, but he firmly believed that he could hold on until the last moment. The traces left behind by a person along the way would eventually form a firm road sign that pointed to the distant future. And right now, he could only endure. After an unknown amount of time. Wu Ling and Gu Feng might have time to record, but Jiang Wang was completely unaware. All his attention was focused on escaping. Gu Feng's Gu worms were very troublesome. Wu Ling was even more proficient in the art of war, but he would definitely hold on until the end. Before his body completely collapsed, his will would be immortal. He was in a daze, constantly telling himself to fly, continue to fly, fly faster, fly with more changes. His body was constantly sinking, while his soul was constantly rising. He had almost forgotten where he was. He only knew that he could not stop. He continued to move. The wind and rain had already stopped at an unknown time. The sky turned bright and dark, time flowed unconsciously. At a certain point, his armpits stopped sweating, his body no longer emitted a new stench, his Rui immortal robe also started to recover its tidiness, his long hair also finally regained some luster. In short, the 5 decrepitude aura in his body was finally incinerated. It was like a light had suddenly entered his mind. Jiang Wang only felt refreshed, like the sun and moon had been awakened. Although his body was already very weak, he felt as if he had been reborn with vitality and freedom. Without saying anything, he turned around. Plop! Like a javelin, he plunged into the sea. He only wanted to wash away the dirt on his body. Wu Ling gave Gu Feng a vigilant look, and also jumped into the sea. They were pondering whether the opponent had some trick up his sleeve. But they had not expected that Jiang Wang really only wanted to take a bath. He had been smelly for too long. Wu Ling and Gu Feng, who were chasing behind him, frowned. How could he not feel anything? Breaking through the undercurrent, passing through the water like a fish. In the vast sea, it was another life and death chase. Not long later, a blue figure charged out of the water, looking at the sky. A young, pale face unexpectedly showed a kind of happiness. Thus, he pulled out his sword, turned around, and bathed in flames in one go. Like a free blue bird, spreading its wings. Chapter 1458. Jiang Wang did not remember how long he had fled for. He had fled until the energy of the 5 blights had been burned to nothing. He had fled until the rain had stopped. Day returned to night, night returned to day. In the days of gritting his teeth, there was no difference. Only the moment he came out of the sea, he had washed away the filth. He looked at the clear sky, the clouds and mist, and felt a kind of unrestrained freedom. This was not a good time. His injuries had not healed, his body and mind were exhausted, he was outnumbered. Wu Ling and Gu Feng were powerful and cautious, they had not revealed any flaws. He should have endured a little longer. In this extreme pursuit, he had used up the good fortune clear sky. Wu Ling and Gu Feng had used up real Tao energy. If he gritted his teeth and persisted, Wu Ling and Gu Feng would use up more. Maintaining this kind of speed, this kind of high vigilance, chasing for so long, Wu Ling and Gu Feng's consumption could be said to be enormous. And he had already killed the 5 blights. Maybe his body could still endure, but at this moment, He felt it was now. The sea of bitterness was boundless. If he was willing to cross it, life would see a startling beauty. Like a startling beauty, sweeping under the sky, above the blue sea, controlling the 8 winds, passing the 4 worlds, reflecting the shadow. How could it be counted? The immortal pure gold expelled the days in his eyes. The flowing fire frost cloak made him appear not so weak. His pale face was also covered in the divine light, and he held a long sword in his hand, coming over on the clouds. Secret treasure star fire, open. Secret treasure chasing wind, open. Secret treasure wind door, open. Secret treasure cape, open. Secret treasure perishing god, open. In front of his chest, 5 blazing white light sources gradually lit up. The secret treasures of the 5 palaces all opened, the light of the 5 magical abilities shining together, revealing the body of the heavenly palace, descending into the state of the sword immortal. The sword energy rushed to the sky, shattering the clouds and mist. A sword supporting the sky and calming the sea, swinging left and right, this was the person. With this person, sword, he chopped towards Wu Ling and Gu Feng at the same time. At this time, Wu Ling and Gu Feng had just come out of the sea, and were still considering what new method to use to reduce the range of Jiang Wang's escape. They had not thought at all that at this time, the moment of victory and defeat would come. They had been chasing Jiang Wang for 2 days and 2 nights. They witnessed Jiang Wang's tenacity with their own eyes. They witnessed how he dragged his wounded body into the sky and into the sea, fleeing for thousands of miles. He also clearly sensed that Jiang Wang's flame of life was gradually declining. Victory was foreseeable, and the humiliation they felt could be washed away by their own hands. After all, he was someone who had faced Dou Zhao head-on. After chasing him for so long, they didn't want to take too many risks. They didn't want to give him a chance to die. He only wanted to advance step by step like this until Jiang Wang's body could no longer support him. Then, he would be able to obtain a piece of jade. They were sure that they didn't give them any chances. But Jiang Wang still turned around. He was startled, but turned his head back. He hated that no one could save him. Wu Ling and the others had a plan. They thought that Jiang Wang might fight to the death before his oil ran out. The only thing he hadn't expected was that this sword strike would come so quickly and so fiercely. The 2 of them were both shocked because of this unexpected choice, because of the resplendent radiance Jiang Wang released at this moment. This was Jiang Qingyang's sword. No wonder he could compete with Dou Zhao. They couldn't help but sigh in admiration. But it was only sigh in admiration. Jiang Wang was tenacious and had a strong will to fight. The 2 of them had also chased him day and night, not relaxing for a moment. They had rehearsed such a scene in their hearts countless times. They had never, and would not, underestimate their opponent. Gu Feng decisively retreated a step. The Dao formula that had been accumulating power for a long time was immediately pressed out. The 7 profound tortoise shell that had been prepared for a long time appeared once again. It gathered energy and blocked in front of the 2 of them. The patterns on the back of the giant tortoise shell were complex and mysterious. It was as majestic as a mountain and gave off the light of yellow earth. It was like a city wall rising from the ground. The butterfly on his shoulder finally waited for a chance. It flapped its wings and danced in front of Jiang Wang. In the dreamy 5 colors, it drew people into a dream. At the same time, a bug flew out from his right. It was only 3 inches long, but it was shaped like an ox. Jiang Wang looked over and vaguely saw that this bug was infinitely huge. It actually carried a country on its back and hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the country. A bug flew out from Gu Feng's left. It looked like a sheep and was 8 inches long. Jiang Wang inadvertently glanced at it and vaguely saw that this bug was as tall as the clouds. It carried a country on its back, and there were hundreds of thousands of people controlling the strings in the country. He had a feeling in his heart. The country carried by the bug on the right was called the Man Clan. The country carried by the bug on the left was called the Tan clan. They confronted Jiang Wang on both sides and fought with Jiang Wang as the boundary. Tens of thousands of corpses would fall in battle. They were fighting for Jiang Wang's body. This was Gu Feng's most powerful gu worm, and it was the most compatible with Reverie Butterfly. It led people into a dream, and they didn't know what day it was. Barbarian Gu fought for the horn of a snail. The small prophet in front of them killed tens of thousands. These two gu worms lived on greed. In the germination of greed, they would unknowingly invade the enemy's body. Then, they would use this body as a battlefield and start an endless national war. Many opponents were already dead, but they still thought that they were fighting for a country. Fighting all their lives was actually helping the gu worm devour their bodies. All the hard work and struggle was suicide. It was really a first-class and terrifying gu worm. Wu Ling wasn't idle either. His big and small eyes stared, and he was already stimulated by killing intent. He directly crushed the long scroll with his foot. Amidst the clear sound of tearing silk, the chi collapsed like a tide. Amidst the surging tide, a line of ancient words with beautiful strokes like flowers and birds floated. It was, "Military is a major matter of the country, a place of life and death, and the path of survival. It cannot be ignored." As soon as the outline of each word appeared, it would shift and land at a certain position around it. There were a total of 19 words, occupying the sky and the earth, in all directions. The moment these words landed, they immediately transformed into tall soldiers. All of them were covered in armor, and their killing intent was obvious. The soldiers and evil chi intertwined and stretched for hundreds of miles, forming a powerful killing formation. It was called ambush from all sides. In an instant, the sky darkened and the earth darkened. It locked the space in all directions, cutting off all paths of retreat, making this place seem like a perpetual night. Wu Ling wasn't willing to let Jiang Wang escape with a feint. He wanted to use this powerful trump card to completely trap Jiang Wang to death while he was about to make a killing blow. If he wanted to die, he had to do it now, without any other thoughts. This Jin Xian Guan duo was indeed good friends. Their coordination was very good. They also lived up to the name of Tianjiao. Their methods were profound and unpredictable. Facing such a sudden sword, in just an instant, they had already completed a series of actions from defense to counterattack to trap and kill. It was like a marching army, tight and continuous, each step filled with killing intent. And at this time, Jiang Wang and his human-shaped sword had finally arrived. Just like how Wu Ling and Gu Feng had already prepared for this moment, Jiang Wang had also never underestimated these two people. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chosen to negotiate from the start and choose to escape. He was very clear that even if he was so decisive and suddenly attacked with this sword, even if he had already reached the limit of power under the current conditions, he still might not be able to kill. The opponent wasn't a chicken or pottery dog, but an existence with enough power to pose a threat. This was a battle of life and death. He had to have the awareness of dying in battle to fight this battle, to fight for the slim chance of victory. The slightly chaotic situation in front of him didn't obscure his eyes. In the roaring sword energy, his eyes flowed with fire, showing the Qianyang red pupil. He looked straight at Wu Ling. The single rider entering formation directly opened, imprinting Wu Ling's image on it. In an instant, he laid down the soul-killing technique, falling west. At the level of the divine soul, the blazing sun crashed down with a loud bang. Jiang Wang activated this technique without caring about the cost, causing the sunlight to be so bright it was about to overflow. Wu Ling's soul was expressionless, relying on the Tong Tian Palace. Using his finger as a brush, he casually drew. At the iron drawing and silver hook, golden spears and armored horses could be seen. Literary energy combined with fiendish energy. It formed a group of swift and fierce soldiers. The soldiers formed a military formation, turning into a big bow. When the strong bow was pulled, the arrow whistled for 10,000 miles. From the earth to the sky, it charged at the falling sun. Boom! It shattered it. Wu Ling's soul power was naturally not as good as Jiang Wang's, but with the Wu family's accumulation of resources, he was definitely not weak. At least in his own Tong Tian palace, he could protect himself. In the past battles, when the falling west killing technique was ineffective, Jiang Wang would retreat. Usually, he would only treat the soul-level battle as a disturbance to the enemy. But this time, after the falling sun on the horizon shattered, however, a figure leaped out from the collapsing sunlight. His green robe fluttered, a stream of flowing light in his hand. His gaze was sharp, sword energy crisscrossing. It was Jiang Wang's soul. The moment he appeared, he directly crashed into Wu Ling's Tong Tian palace, a sword pulling horizontally. This was clearly a choice that was out of Wu Ling's expectations. This was a bad move. In his own Tong Tian palace, Wu Ling's soul was not weaker than Jiang Wang's. Although he was shocked, he didn't panic. He opened his hands, directly forming a pair of judge brushes. Holding them in his palms, he charged at Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang dared to fight like this in his Tong Tian palace. What was he afraid of? What made him surprised again was his judge brushes directly stabbed into Jiang Wang's eyes, penetrating Jiang Wang's skull. Jiang Wang didn't even defend. Similarly, the Xiangxi sword spirit in his hand also slashed over, chopping off his head. Although in the state of soul manifestation, these weren't fatal enough injuries. But people always had the instinct to protect their vital parts. It was hard to suppress. Jiang Wang didn't seem to have that kind of instinct to protect himself at all. He was too determined to carry out the action, which was why he had this injury for injury. But what was the point of doing this? Wu Ling quickly recovered his soul manifestation, but he still couldn't understand. In his own Tong Tian palace, both sides were injured. No matter what, he had the advantage. Not to mention that he had a helper outside, Gu Shun. Injury for injury, he would never lose. What was Jiang Wang thinking? Was it the craziness of a trapped beast before death? He was still confused, but Jiang Wang's soul manifestation had already approached him. Without hesitation, he attacked wildly. How could Wu Ling show weakness? He didn't care what Jiang Wang thought. As long as he wouldn't lose, he would fight to the end. Enduring the pain of his soul being injured, he held the judge brushes in both hands and stabbed back repeatedly. For a moment, the two sides were like a street fight, weakening each other's soul. You knife and I sword, purely relying on willpower and pure strength. When Wu Ling was in a trance and felt that his soul couldn't bear it anymore, Jiang Wang, who was also on the verge of collapse, suddenly withdrew his sword and withdrew from the Tong Tian palace. Wu Ling was alerted. Exhausting the soul might be Jiang Wang's purpose. Then, what did he want to do next? A battle at the soul level started and ended with a thought. The battle in the Tong Tian palace ended. At this moment, the indomitable human sword style outside his body collided with the 7 black tortoise shell. Crack! There was a clear cracking sound. Cracks appeared on the 7 black tortoise shell. In the shattered tortoise shell fragments, Jiang Wang continued to charge forward with his sword. The battle of barbaric touch, reverie butterfly, and ambush from all sides. He turned a blind eye. He didn't notice. In his eyes, he only saw his opponent's defense. He ignored all the attacks and only wanted to be fast. Faster, faster. Racing for time. Fighting for life. Kill one person first or be killed first. He didn't consider the third choice. His aura was too fierce, and his movements were too fast. Wu Ling was almost in a trance at the soul level, and Jiang Wang had already crashed into him. On the iron crown on his head, a waterfall of literary energy fell. The river surged for thousands of years. It turned into 4 words, immovable as a mountain. In an instant the air became sticky, and everything that was about to approach or had already approached became sluggish. It was impossible for a good commander to not have a backup plan, who would underestimate a battle of life and death. This was a method that he had prepared long ago, and it was suitable to use at this moment. Suddenly, he saw a wisp of fire. What a brilliant flame it was! It burned in front of him, making him vaguely see the scene of the long night being illuminated. And the words, "immovable as a mountain," were silently shattered. Wu Ling was shocked, and then he remembered that he still had a treasure armor to protect him. He raised his hands and directly grabbed a pair of judge's brushes. One on the left and one on the right. He suddenly thrust them forward, and the two peaks pierced his ears. Then, he saw a wisp of wind. A wisp of frosty white wind. It blew over so gently. He didn't feel any pain, because everything shattered too easily. What a terrifying divine ability! At the last moment of his consciousness falling asleep, he was still thinking, how could it be? At this moment, the two people in the air were so close to each other. Like old friends who hadn't seen each other for years, they were happy to meet each other. Wu Ling's pair of judge's brushes had already pierced in front of Jiang Wang's temples. They had even broken a few strands of hair. But they fell just like that. During this whole process, Jiang Wang was expressionless, and his eyebrows didn't even twitch. Looking at Wu Ling's entire body falling in front of him, he only reached out and grabbed the thought-extracting jade annulus. Then, he turned around and looked at Gokuen. Wu Ling was dead, and the 10-sided ambush-killing formation that he regarded as his trump card was broken by itself, and it didn't play any role at all. Originally, it was to trap and kill Jiang Wang, but this time, Jiang Wang didn't even think about escaping. All of this happened too quickly. Only at this moment did Gokuen's attack fall on him. The two barbarians wanted to collide, but the place they regarded as the battlefield, a huge, red-gold heart fell. It blocked the two armies of the barbarians on both sides. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't move or drill through. The reverie butterfly dance. Even though it was colorful, it couldn't shake the endless red-gold light. It was eternal and immortal. Gokuen stood there in a daze. He still didn't understand how the situation had suddenly become like this. How could someone as strong as Wu Ling die so suddenly? Apart from this, the defeat of the reverie butterfly and the barbarian worms gave him a feeling of, as expected. To be able to fight Do Zhao head-on, to be able to drag his injured body and flee for 2 days and nights, to be able to kill Wu Ling with his injured body. It was understandable that Jiang Wang could do all this. He was powerful to begin with. Wu Ling's corpse was falling, and Jiang Wang was turning around. Gokuen noticed that Jiang Wang's expression was calm and gentle after the intense killing intent subsided. It was a suffocating sense of control. Very good, we've gotten rid of the troublesome person. He heard Jiang Wang say this. He saw Jiang Wang grin. You can really see my 5 mystical abilities now. That smile was originally warm and sunny, and it was very warm. However, Gokuen only felt his hair stand on end. His heart was in his throat, and he felt a huge sense of fear. Jiang Wang wasn't lying. If Jiang Wang could kill him, he would dare to kill him. He didn't even have time to clean up the bugs. He instantly left behind a few Dao techniques and blocked the 2 of them. He turned around and fled for his life. He ran very quickly, just like Jiang Wang a few days ago. P.S. I was startled but turned back. I hate but no one cares. Su Shi's Divinator. Residence in Huangzhou Dinghui Courtyard, the sea of bitterness is boundless. If one is willing to fight to cross it, one's life will be filled with surprises. Chapter 1459. Jiang Wang stood where he was, quietly watching Guqing escape. The killing intent surrounding him was excited but restrained. He seemed to be considering whether he could really kill Guqing so that this person would not have time to commit suicide. He seemed to be hesitating whether it was worth the risk of exposing his abilities for a mere Guqing. In short, he did not move. Guqing's flying figure quickly disappeared from his sight. From Jiang Wang's body, a figure in a fluttering green robe jumped out. It was exactly the same as Jiang Wang, but full of energy and vigor. Its cold gaze turned, and it randomly chose a direction and flew far away. The red makeup mirror's illusory body. Jiang Wang rarely used this ability of the red makeup mirror now, because at the level of battle he had experienced, the red makeup mirror's illusory body could not be of much use. No matter how lifelike the illusory body was, it did not have real battle strength. With a slight touch of the battle's aftermath, one could distinguish between the real and the fake. It was very useful when there was no one to fight. When a paper tiger could not be exposed, it was still a tiger. Jiang Wang purposely left a thread of consciousness on it, so that after it flew out of the red makeup mirror's area of control, it could still fly far away until its power was exhausted. Directly letting the illusory body chase after Guqing was of course a more realistic choice, but it was also more risky. No matter how much Guqing feared death, it would not be to the extent that he did not dare to fight back. As long as he attacked, he could immediately expose Jiang Wang's powerful illusion. When the killing general returned, Jiang Wang would be in trouble. On the other hand, if he flew in another direction, it would cause people to have many suspicions and be unable to determine his intentions. Even Jiang Wang himself did not know where the illusory body would fly to. Perhaps it would collapse if it bumped into something on the way, or perhaps it would fly very far. In short, Jiang Wang could not care so much. After wiping away his traces, he fell head first. Plop! He fell straight into the sea. Too tired, his heavily injured body that had been in battle for a long time could not take it anymore. Otherwise, with his habits, he wouldn't have threatened Go Lin. If he still had strength, he would have tried to kill him first. He restrained his aura and sealed his 5 senses. Relying on his last tenacious will, he forced himself to form a hand seal. A dim light flowed into his body, and then he lost consciousness. As for the calamity seal that he had just obtained, he had only grasped a tiny bit of it. There was no way he could use it in battle. At this moment, using it to conceal himself was better than nothing. He was doing his best. Maybe he would be eaten by some fish, or maybe Gutu would be suspicious and find a flaw, so he would come back and search the sea to find him. He did the best he could under the circumstances. He could only accept the unknown fate that awaited him and was powerless to resist. The myriad heavens, the myriad worlds, and the 1,000 eras. What can last forever? Countless romantic winds, let them all go with the wind. Those who thought they wouldn't forget were all forgotten in the end. Since ancient times, there has never been a dynasty that lasted for 10,000 years. The so-called Great Will was only passed down for 1,000 years. And the carvings on this stone came from several great eras ago. 30,000 years of bones carved into a mountain range, 7 quadrillion lives weathered in time. What do you think is truly immortal? I feel lonely. Born and dying, eternal loneliness. Jiang Wang vaguely heard some words. It was like a person sighing about something. It was such a fragmented emotion. He seemed to have some feelings, but when he woke up, he had already forgotten all of them. He woke up. The first thing he sensed was his body. He was still very weak, but at least he had regained some strength. The heavenly palace physique was indeed powerful. The light of the 5 divine abilities silently shone, and it actually healed some of his injuries. Of course, for the most serious places, such as the places that had been ravaged by the 5 deaths and the true Samadhi fire, it was difficult to rely on the body's instinct to heal. He had to focus on healing. After gaining a general understanding, Jiang Wang opened his eyes. It was still pitch black in front of him. Of course, his visual perception was not affected. He saw a dark red wall, some dark brown messy impurities, turtle shells, fish bones, and some unknown algae. The dark red wall squirmed a little. Splash! A large amount of seawater, wrapped in fish, shrimp, crabs, and shellfish, rushed in from a deep opening. After a while, the seawater flowed out, but the fish, shrimp, crabs, and shellfish were still there. They bounced and gradually stopped. They were corroding at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this time, Jiang Wang's body, which was gradually waking up, felt a kind of softness and movement. Then, there was a sticky feeling. He found that he was wrapped in a mud-like black liquid, and the Rui immortal robe on his body was already very dim. If he was unconscious for a while, it might be damaged again. At this time, Jiang Wang certainly understood that he was in the belly of a big fish. This should be considered good news, because in this way, his traces would be more thoroughly covered. Fortunately, this big fish did not have the habit of chewing and then swallowing. Jiang Wang jumped out of the black liquid, found a relatively high place, and sat down again. This place was a bit smelly, but he did not intend to leave now. The most important thing now was to nurse his body and recover from his injuries. It was safe here, but once he went out, he could not afford to make any mistakes. In the belly of a fish, he did not know day and night. Jiang Wang did not have time to think about time. His body, which could be considered strong, was often beaten up in the mountain sea realm. He did not become a good doctor after being sick for a long time. After all, his medical skills were profound and could not be improved in a few days. But he was already used to things like repairing the damage of his body. Since entering the mountain sea realm, he had encountered many dangers. He did not know whether to say that the environment here was too bad or that he should blame his bad luck. Jiang Wang would not underestimate his strength. If he found it difficult to move, others would definitely not have it easy. Was this degree of difficulty really within the scope of a normal test? Immodestly speaking, he was already so exhausted. In the past 900 years, how many people in the Chu country could pass the test here? He did not know if it had anything to do with the appearance of the 9 jade discs. Just like that, he was lost in his thoughts while carefully healing his injuries. When his body was almost recovered, he picked up his sword and stood up. In front of him, the fish and turtles were dead, and their shells were half rotten. Yesterday was not today. Even in the belly of a sea fish, there was also the vicissitudes of life. Jiang Wang could have cut open the fish's belly and left, but after all, he still had Lai to send him off, so he waited for a while. The moment this big fish ate again, he directly wrapped his body with water essence and rushed out of its throat. This was a big clumsy fish, relying on the advantage of its body size. It could be domineering, but in the face of those strange beasts it was just food. At this moment, its protruding fish eyes turned and looked at the little guy in front of it, obviously a little confused. Jiang Wang ignored it and summoned the remembrance grass. After looking at it for a while, he rushed out of the sea and looked for Zhuo. The remembrance secret technique could still sense the traces of Zhuo's soul, which meant that Zhuo and the others had not gone too far. When they separated, Yu Tiannu's injuries had not healed, and Zhuo was still unconscious. They could not bear the risk, and he did not know how they were doing now, and at that time, in order to not make Wu Ling and the others suspicious, he had deliberately held the only piece of orange song jade annulus in his hand. Without the jade annulus, even if Yu Tiannu and Zhuo wanted to leave, they could not take anything with them. They would be in a very difficult situation. Thinking of this, he flew very quickly. After several days of being chased, and then being unconscious for who knew how many days, Jiang Wang had lost his direction again. He could only follow the weak senses of the remembrance secret technique as he flew. Distant sky, blue sea, blue clothes fluttering in the wind. Fortunately, there were no more accidents on the way. No strange beast in a bad mood came out to rob him. About 4 hours later, the senses of the remembrance secret technique became very clear. 6 hours later, a figure appeared in his field of vision. Jiang Wang's flying figure came to an abrupt halt in midair. In his field of vision, the sky was clear and the sea breeze was free. On the calm blue sea surface, the enormous mechanical Maharaga was resting. It stood motionless, its snake head drooping slightly. Yu Tianyu, who was resting on its left palm, and Zhuo Guangshu, who was resting on its right palm, were both sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed, as if in meditation. They were completely unaware of Jiang Wang's arrival, and all of Jiang Wang's attention was focused on the front of the mechanical Maharaga. About 10 zhang away, it was a man in a wide robe with large sleeves. His side was facing the Maharaga, and he was sitting cross-legged on the mirror-like surface of the sea. He held a very long fishing rod in his hand. The fishing line hung high, as if it had reached very deep into the water. The mechanical Maharaga was to his right. Jiang Wang had just arrived and was to his left. Qian Yang's scarlet eyes could clearly see the side of this person's face. His brows and eyes were clear, and his facial features were distinct. Jiang Wang gripped his sword tightly. How could he not remember this person? The last time they met was in the state of Yong. On an ordinary street in Wenxi County, the two of them had a very brief exchange. Zhang Linchuan. No, last time this person said he was not Zhang Linchuan. But was this person the same person as last time? Was this Zhang Linchuan really that Zhang Linchuan? The more Jiang Wang pondered, the more irritated he became. That person turned his head and glanced at him. It was this glance that calmed Jiang Wang down. It was indeed the person he had met in Wenxi County. That aloof temperament, which seemed to be independent of the world, had left a very deep impression on Jiang Wang. "I didn't expect it to be you," the person said. His voice was still gentle. It didn't seem to be hostile. Jiang Wang looked at the two people in the mechanical Maharaga's hands, and then looked at him. "What's the matter?" The person held the fishing rod in his hand and sat motionless. He only said, "That woman tracked me before, so I left a mark. I sensed it not long ago, so I came over to take a look." His tone was calm as he described a very simple matter. "They didn't have the 9 jade annulus on them, so I thought to wait. Maybe someone would come over, and then I saw you." Jiang Wang raised his eyebrows. "Fishing? Who knows?" The person said, "Maybe I'm the fish." At this moment Jiang Wang remembered that Yu Tianyu seemed to have found some traces earlier, and she had indeed tried to track him. He couldn't help but ask, "That person who fought with the Kuei ox, was it you?" The person calmly said, "It couldn't be considered a fight. I was just being chased and beaten. You made me feel deep veneration, and I can't help but sigh at my own inferiority," Jiang Wang said. "But you're still holding your sword," the person said. Jiang Wang said, "It's easy to put it down, but difficult to pick it up again." The person raised his head slightly and said, "That makes sense." Jiang Wang thought for a while, then asked, "Do you remember what you said last time? Can you tell me now, who are you?" "There's nothing hard to say," the man said calmly. "I used to be called Wang Changji, now I'm called Wang Nianxiang." Jiang Wang almost immediately thought of Wang Changxiang. Thus, he logically thought of that extremely famous good-for-nothing eldest son of the Wang clan. Your senior brother Changxiang's elder brother? He couldn't hide the surprise in his voice. Wang Changji didn't immediately answer. He paused for a moment, then asked, "Are you familiar with Changxiang?" "Not really, because senior brother Changxiang is out on missions almost every day, so I rarely see him," Jiang Wang said casually. "But he's a very good person." "Is that so?" Wang Changji looked at the fishing line in front of him. "If you don't mind, you can tell me more about him." Jiang Wang thought that perhaps the two brothers hadn't seen each other for a long time. Then he wondered if they knew the truth behind the destruction of Maplewood City. Wang Changji was now living under the guise of Zhang Linchuan. He wondered what he had experienced. He seemed to be hostile to Zhang Linchuan. Previously, when he was in Yong, He seemed to be investigating Zhang Linchuan's lifeless sect. Could Wang Changji become a helper? With these thoughts in mind, Jiang Wang's hand left the sword hilt and he landed on the sea. The first time I met senior brother Changxiang was in the Dao Merit Hall of the Dao College in Maplewood City. I have a deep impression of him. At that time, I had just entered the inner sect and I was just a nobody. After senior brother Changxiang checked the Dao Merit Hall, he waited for me for a while just to say hello to me. It was a very simple greeting. As he recalled, he said, his smile was very warm. He was the kind of person who was very gentle. Wang Changji was silent for a long time. Anything else? He asked. We once participated in the investigation of Xiaolin town together. Senior brother Changxiang's wind Taoist technique was very powerful. Later, he also performed well in the Three Cities Dao discussion. But because he could only release the breath tornado once in a short period of time, we all called him Wang Ichue. I seem to have missed a lot. Wang Changji asked again, anything else? Jiang Wang thought seriously and shook his head regretfully. Senior brother Changxiang is too hard-working. He took on more missions than anyone else and was always busy outside. We really didn't have much chance to meet. At this point, he asked tentatively, he should be in the Qinghe County Dao College now, or maybe he went to the National Dao College. Didn't you go to see him? He also died in Maplewood City. Wang Changji said calmly, he came back to see me. The surface of the sea was like a mirror, reflecting two people, one sitting and one standing, and an unbearable silence. The words, restrain your grief, could not be said. After being silent for a long time, Jiang Wang finally reacted to a word. At that time. He looked at Wang Changji's profile and asked, were you there when Maplewood City was destroyed? Wang Changji gripped the fishing rod tightly and said slowly, I am the White Bone Taoist. Chapter 1460. White Bone Taoist, White Bone Taoist. These 4 words almost immediately awakened all his memories. For a long time, Jiang Wang firmly believed that he was the source of the disaster, the core figure of the White Bone cult, the White Bone Taoist who was about to welcome the descent of the evil god. He had been puzzled, pained, struggled, and despaired because of this. Of course, he had killed Zhuang Chengqian and faced the might of the White Bone evil god, so he no longer feared the White Bone Taoist. But Wang Zhangji was this generation's White Bone Taoist? Jiang Wang felt a sense of absent-mindedness. Then, he suddenly remembered that the White Bone Sacred Lord he had seen at the battlefield of Chiang seemed to have occupied Wang Zhangji's body. Because at that time Lu Yen had said, White Bone, you are no longer Wang Zhangji. At that time, he had been very puzzled, but Zhuang Chengqian had disguised himself as Jiang Yen. When he had met the current Wang Zhangji in Yong, he had casually described Wang Zhangji's appearance as the White Bone Sacred Lord who had appeared on the battlefield. But at that time, Jiang Wang had not connected the two, only faintly feeling a sense of familiarity. After all, Wang Zhangji was very unfamiliar to him. After all, even if it was the same body, the difference in temperament would be great. White Bone Sacred Lord, White Bone Taoist, White Bone Emissary. A ball of thread seemed to become more and more tangled, but Jiang Wang quickly unraveled the cocoon and touched upon the truth. After all, he had personally experienced the battle between Zhuang Chengqian and the White Bone Sacred Lord, so he already had a good grasp of the White Bone cult's information. He also had a deep enough understanding of the White Bone Taoist, the vessel chosen by the evil god to descend into the world. The 4 words, White Bone Taoist, were a kind of designed sorrow in itself. How powerless were humans in front of the evil god! Jiang Wang looked at the man in front of him and imagined the story he had experienced. In the disaster of Maplewood City's destruction, when his hair turned white and he looked back at his hometown of Maplewood City. Someone else was also in a certain place, watching everything in despair. They had felt similar pain and felt similar powerlessness. In the terrifying power of the evil god's descent, they had felt the world collapse. Their homeland had been destroyed, their homes shattered, and the people they cherished had been crushed like ants. All they could do was watch. She opened her eyes wide, not wanting to miss a single scene. In the beginning, they also said that I was the white-boned Taoist, Jiang Wang said, looking at the sea. The reflection in the mirror told him what he had become after all these years. He promised me a position in the Bone Divine Nation. Tell me you'll do everything for me. Looks like you don't believe me, Wang Zhangji said calmly. No, I believe you. Jiang Wang said, I was very gullible at that time. Wang Zhangji didn't say anything. He recalled that Wang Zhangxiang at that time was also very gullible. He believed that his elder brother only had problems with his Tao meridians or his physique. He was confident that if there was a will, there would be a way. He naively thought that he could rely on his own efforts to solve the problem of his elder brother being unable to cultivate. Clearly, he had just stepped into the world of cultivation. Why would he have such delusions? He had clearly encouraged him to cultivate in the hope that he would leave Maplewood City as soon as possible and never look back. However, he would come back every now and then, bringing all kinds of messy medicine. He had clearly treated him coldly and foolishly, but he seemed to have seen the pain under the heavy body. He would always walk into the courtyard with a warm smile. He could never chase him away. I chose to tell my teacher about this matter, Jiang Wang continued, the dean of Maplewood City's Tao Academy, Dong A. When I was attacked by the Bone Sex demons, he personally detoxified me and captured the demons himself. He patiently guided me on the problems of cultivation, gave me his jade pendant, and taught me the secret technique to control Tao essence. He did many things for the Tao Academy in the city. A hint of pain appeared in Wang Zhangji's distant eyes. This made him come alive. It was as if he had re-established a connection with this world. He thought that Wang Zhangxiang's trust in him was even greater than Jiang Wang's trust in Dong A. When the Bone God took control of this body and killed Zhang Xiang, how much pain must he have felt? In the last moment of his life, what was Zhang Xiang thinking? The person who betrayed you always made you suffer even more. Wang Zhangji said, because you didn't put up your guard against him. Later, I killed him. Jiang Wang's tone was indescribable. On New Year's Eve 2 years ago, that street was very long and also very deserted. It rained heavily that day. He looked at Wang Zhangji. I've never told anyone these things, but I think you might be able to understand. Wang Zhangji was silent for a moment and said, from the day I was born, there was a pair of eyes watching me. They looked at me without blinking. I only knew when I was 12 years old. At that time, I often had the desire to kill like a madman. Looking at my father's chattering mouth, I wanted to slit his throat. When a maid walked in front of me, I wanted to take a sword and stab her in the back. I locked myself in my room and refused to see anyone. I searched through all the ancient books collected by the Wang family and bought all the classics of the predecessors that could be bought on the market. I didn't restrict myself to Buddhism, Taoism, Dharma, or ink, but I still couldn't find a way to save myself. One night, I was reading scriptures under the oil lamp. When I turned around, I saw that pair of eyes. Wang Zhangji's tone was so calm. But the listener could feel the fear even more, the feeling that could drive people crazy. It didn't have any emotions, and it didn't communicate with me. No matter what I did, whether I scolded it or attacked it, it didn't have any reaction. I couldn't reveal its existence to anyone. As long as I had this thought, I couldn't open my mouth. Even if I didn't open my mouth, I could still pass on information. I thought for a long time and thought of a way to ask Grandpa Song for help. He was the Wang family's consecrator and the strongest person I knew at that time. The next day, he died. Wang Zhangji said slowly. He said something went wrong during his cultivation. Jiang Wang could almost imagine that kind of despair. Mortals were powerless in the face of gods. No matter how they struggled and resisted, they could only watch themselves slide into the abyss step by step. No matter what they did, it was useless. The more they struggled, the more people they would implicate. How did a 12-year-old boy survive those years? I tried to commit suicide many times, but I couldn't die. Using a knife, using poison, hanging. Those eyes were always looking at me. Many times I thought I was dead, but when I woke up, nothing had changed. Wang Zhangji said, I grew up day by day, and those eyes were always looking at me. It was always the same as what I saw when I was 12 years old. I was afraid for many years and thought of many ways, but it was useless. Later, I thought, no matter what the ending was, it should come quickly. I've already given up. If that's my life, I can accept it. Wang Zhangji lowered his eyes and looked at his hand. I can accept it. He could accept all the endings. The only thing he couldn't accept was that Wang Zhangxiang had died in front of him. Jiang Wang calmed down and said slowly, Today, to be able to meet you in the mountain sea realm, I'm beginning to feel that perhaps it's a kind of fate. I'm not saying that fate allowed us to meet, and I've never believed that there's a high and mighty will treating you and me well. What I'm saying is that it's because we never gave up that we came to this day. The paths under our feet intersect here. Wang Zhangji hadn't had any emotions for a long time. He had never talked to anyone about the past. But as Jiang Wang said, perhaps you'll understand. Humans spent their entire lives searching for a kind of resonance. Everyone needed to be understood, but who could truly be understood? Who had experienced what he had experienced, felt what he had felt, and suffered from what he had suffered. But at that time he, who was curled up in the corner of his body, and Jiang Wang, who had lived to a ripe old age and fled with his sister on his back, had briefly looked at each other in the face of tragic fate. They had traveled thousands of miles and met again in the mountain sea realm. When we were in Yong, I should have talked to you more, Wang Zhangji said softly. It's not too late now because we still have a long way to go, Jiang Wang said. What about after leaving Maplewood City? I think you've also experienced a lot to get here. Wang Zhangji thought for a moment and said, Although the White Bone's evil god's plan to descend in Maplewood City failed, and the White Bone True Elixir was taken away by the Zhuang Kingdom's emperor and minister, he still controlled my Taoist body and successfully escaped. Later, he set up a trap thousands of miles away and cultivated the White Bone sacred body on the battlefield of Qiyang. He wanted to restart the descent plan. But all of this was within Zhang Linchuan's plan. Bone Messenger Zhang Linchuan? Jiang Wang asked. Now, he's the lifeless sex patriarch. Wang Zhangji said, Zhang Linchuan personally chose the Yang Kingdom for the White Bone's evil god to descend. He wanted to use the strong cultivators in Qi to wipe out the White Bone's evil god's will. He had already eliminated all the people who were loyal to the White Bone's evil god in the White Bone's path. He teamed up with Lu Yen and White Lotus and attacked the White Bone sacred body when the sacred lord of White Bones was weak. I also took action at that time and expelled the White Bone's evil god's will. Later, Zhang Linchuan took over the White Bone sacred body. My soul also left my body and took over his body. That's why you see me like this now. Wang Zhangji's narration was very simple. He explained the matter in a few words and his tone was very calm. But Jiang Wang, who had a deep understanding of the White Bone's evil god, felt the waves in it. He didn't know that there was such a thrilling past until today. Zhang Linchuan once said that he often felt that there was a knife poking at him from behind. Every moment was urgent. He knew that Zhang Linchuan was ambitious, but he really didn't expect that Zhang Linchuan's ambition would be so big. He used his body to plot against God and wanted to reach the sky in one step. He actually did it. Outside, there was Zhuang Gaoxian, Duruhui Dong-a, the resistance force of the entire Maplewood City, and even Chongxian and Chu Liang on the battlefield of Qiyang. Inside, there were 3 elders, a saintess, 12 bone faces, and even Wang Zhangji's will was hidden in the white bone sacred body. He was just an emissary among the many higher-ups of the white bone's path. His cultivation and experience were very limited. However, he was the one who succeeded in this matter. In such a chaotic situation, he was able to seize the greatest benefits. He borrowed power from many sides and plotted to seize the sacred body. Everyone made a wedding dress for him. And Wang Zhangji? A mortal whose cultivation was directly restricted. In an era when the White Bone's evil god had changed its strategy because of Zhuang Chengqian and put many restrictions on the body of a Taoist, he was still able to persist and not be destroyed by the will of the White Bone's evil god. On the contrary, he even used the will of a mortal to expel the will of the White Bone's evil god. This was a magnificent feat that could be called a miracle. These 2 people cooperated and competed with each other. In the end, they even exchanged bodies. How wonderful was the process! It was too hard to imagine and too amazing. I roughly know why you were watched since birth. But you should be the last White Bone's Taoist. Jiang Wang said in a serious tone, the White Bone's evil god has already formed the embryo of Tao. He can be born in the world at any time without being rejected. Perhaps he has already been born in some corner of the world and is silently growing. Wang Zhangji raised his eyes and looked at him. Obviously, this information was very important to him. How do you know? Jiang Wang calmed his emotions and said, I also experienced another resistance against the White Bone's evil god, a resistance that lasted for several hundred years. That was indeed a very difficult battle, but it could also be called a magnificent battle. Especially the final battle. Almost every step was on the edge of life and death. Even now, when he thought about it, he was still shocked. Even if he could do it all over again, he might not be able to achieve the same result. He said somewhat ruefully, I don't know if you're interested in hearing the story of the previous White Bone's Taoist? I'm very interested in everything about the White Bone's evil god. Wang Zhangji looked at the seat next to him and said, Sit. Jiang Wang took a few steps forward and subconsciously glanced at the mechanical Maharaga standing on the surface of the water. Wang Zhangji immediately said, Don't worry. They're just asleep. That's for the best. Jiang Wang breathed a sigh of relief. He walked over and sat down next to him. They're my friends. If Zhuo Guangshu had suffered some irreversible injury, he really didn't know how to get along with Wang Zhangji. This kind of concern was naturally also out of goodwill toward Wang Zhangji. Wang Zhangji thought for a moment and said, This woman is actually very strong, but her soul is very flawed. He didn't mention Zhuo Guangshu. Perhaps Zhuo Guangshu didn't seem very strong to him, or perhaps Zhuo Guangshu hadn't recovered yet when they had fought, so he hadn't been able to do much. Or perhaps he subconsciously felt that the person Jiang Wang valued so much should be the female Yu Tiannu. Even if she was a puppet, Jiang Wang and Yu Tiannu actually didn't have much of a friendship, nor did he care much about her. But after thinking for a moment, he still asked, Does Brother Wang have any suggestions? Wang Zhangji said, She actually doesn't need my suggestions. If she has to say something, I'll tell her. Comprehend the nature of treasures, the body of the spirit boat. Comprehend the nature of treasures, the body of the spirit boat. Jiang Wang repeated, then couldn't help but ask, What does that mean? If you tell her, she'll naturally know, Wang Zhangji said. Now, let me hear your story. Jiang Wang didn't hesitate. After thinking for a moment, he said, This story will begin with Zhuang Chengqian splitting the land and establishing the country. Immediately, he began to narrate in detail the several hundred years of conflict between Zhuang Chengqian and the White Bone evil god, describing that soul-stirring battle in the ancient demon cave, all the way to the mountain sea realm and into the night. A faint golden light flowed on the body of the mechanical Kuroja, as if illuminating the two people conversing. One had a bundle of hair, the other had a drape of hair, one was calm and steady, one was cold and sparse, rippling in the water. This long story finally came to an end. When Jiang Wang reached the part where he finally destroyed Zhuang Qingqian's remnant soul, Wang Zhangji couldn't help but praise, "Truly a wonderful story." Then he added, "Very wonderful." Given his temperament, this was already an extremely rare expression. "That's right," Jiang Wang also sighed. "Even now, when I think of Zhuang Qingqian, I still feel like I can't breathe. It's also not the first time that I've realized how terrifying the gods of the netherworld are. We definitely don't have the qualifications to look down on them." Wang Zhangji said, "I'm talking about you. It's very wonderful." Jiang Wang subconsciously wanted to respond modestly, but for some reason, in front of the current Wang Zhangji, modesty seemed like a kind of hypocrisy. He thought for a moment, then said seriously, "I really do have to thank myself. No matter what situation I am in, I never give up. I have to thank all of my past efforts, allowing me to walk so resolutely into the future." The golden light on the mechanical Kuroja's body had already reached some distance away. But Jiang Wang's entire body still seemed to be bathed in the light. This was a kind of radiance that came from the inside out. This kind of intention and heart was different from that of humans. "Have you ever thought about what kind of future that will be?" Wang Zhangji asked softly. "I actually haven't thought about it," Jiang Wang said. "How could a person not think about the future? Unless it was truly too far away. So far away that even he, who was already famous throughout the world, still felt that it was unattainable." In truth, Wang Zhangji completely understood these words, but he still said, "There's no harm in imagining it." Jiang Wang thus seriously thought about it, then said, "If I think about it now, I still don't know what the future will be like. But I think that in that future that might or might not come, there will definitely be no Du Ruhui, no Zhuang Gaoxian, no Zhang Linchuan, and no White Bone Evil God." Wang Zhangji said, "You'll see that day." He raised his eyes to the sky, his voice filled with boundless longing and melancholy. "We'll all see that day." Jiang Wang felt very subtly moved in his heart. In truth, he wasn't very familiar with Wang Zhangji. In the past, they had never interacted with each other in Maplewood City. After leaving Maplewood City, they had only interacted a few times. But at this moment, in this mountain sea realm, sitting next to Wang Zhangji, for some reason, he didn't feel so lonely. It was like walking through the endless night, holding a flame alone in the dusk. Even though you were brave and fearless, even though you kept telling yourself that you could walk to the end of the long night alone. But when you suddenly discovered another torch, walking in the same direction as you, burning in the long night like you would feel warm. The only thing that could light up a flame was another flame. This night would last forever. "I think so too," Jiang Wang said. "That's right," Jiang Wang said seriously. "You said before that you were waiting here for the 9 jade walls. If you need it, I have 2 pieces here. I can give you one. You fought for it with your sword. How can I just take it away?" Wang Zhangji held the fishing rod and said indifferently, "Keep it for yourself. I don't really need it. Besides, you can take it from others." Jiang Wang thought about how he silently killed Moon slaves Guangshu, so he didn't say anything. He just said, "Actually, I don't know what's the use of fighting for the 9 jade walls. It's just a key. Can't it be used to come and go? What if there's more than one lock?" Seeing that Jiang Wang was a little stunned, Wang Zhangji said, "I'm just saying. After all, I don't know much about this place." "But what you said makes sense," Jiang Wang said. Wang Zhangji shook his head gently. "There's something wrong with this world. I sense that the 9 jade walls may represent some kind of law. The more you master, the more you can protect yourself." At this point, he changed the topic. "If possible, I'd like to ask you for a favor in the future." Jiang Wang didn't agree immediately. Instead, he asked, "Can you tell me what it is?" For someone like Jiang Wang, no one would think that he was shirking. A man of his word wouldn't make promises lightly. He wouldn't make promises that he couldn't fulfill. Wang Zhangji didn't hesitate and said bluntly, "This body isn't very good. I need to make more preparations. I saw an opportunity in the Mountain Sea territory. He could escape unscathed from the Kuei cow's pursuit." This body wasn't very good? Jiang Wang was stunned for a moment before he realized that Wang Zhangji might be talking about the aptitude. After all, Zhang Linchuan had painstakingly planned to abandon this body for the white-boned saint body. It was enough to show the difference in aptitude between the two bodies. "If I can help you, I'd be happy to," Jiang Wang said. Wang Zhangji said, "If the opportunity arises, I'll contact you. If there's no good opportunity, then I wish you good luck." "Okay." Jiang Wang nodded. Looking at his movements, he finally couldn't help but ask, "What are you fishing for?" Wang Zhangji looked at the fishing line hanging in the deep sea and said calmly, "I'm not fishing for anything. I'm fighting for the right to fish." Jiang Wang was even more confused. Fighting for the right to fish? With who? "You'll understand in the future," Wang Zhangji said as he handed over the fishing rod. "I'll leave it to you." Jiang Wang somewhat blankly took the fishing rod. It was smooth and warm to the touch. Other than that, he didn't feel anything else. If they continue to sleep, it'll be very difficult for them to wake up. Let's stop here for today. Wang Zhangji gave him a deep look and said, "I'm very happy to see you. With a gentleman on the same journey, the long road is not lonely," Jiang Wang said seriously. Then, right before his eyes, Wang Zhangji suddenly vanished. To say that it was sudden was not accurate, because his disappearance wasn't sudden. On the contrary, it was natural and calm. It was like a meticulously drawn landscape painting that was silently missing a leaf or a blade of grass. The composition of the painting was not lacking in the slightest. What difference did it make if there was one more leaf or one less? The night was pitch black, and the Golem Maharaja stood in the darkness. Jiang Wang sat alone on the surface of the water. Everything he had just experienced, everything they had talked about, seemed like an illusion. How could it be an illusion? Jiang Wang held the long fishing rod in his hand. He felt that the fishing line hadn't hooked anything. He gently raised the fishing rod, and ripples appeared on the surface of the sea, as if something had been broken. The fishing rod in his hand also disappeared. The entire world seemed to be calling out to some kind of great wave. The Golem Maharaja, which had stopped not too far away, turned its snake-like eyes. Crack, crack. The night began to flow once more. Chapter 1461. The night seemed to have been uncovered. The world seemed to have shown a different face. It was only now that Jiang Wang realized that he had been communicating with Wang Zhangji in the environment that he had constructed. He was more than 10 times stronger than when they met in the state of Yong. But Wang Zhangji's means were more and more silent. At that time, he could still sense that he had been involved in the battle of the spirits, so he immediately summoned the spirit-hidden snake to prepare for battle. But today, he didn't notice anything strange. Although it was partly because Wang Zhangji did not launch an attack, his spirit power was undoubtedly on a higher level. If his spirit power was on the same level as North Xiang's, then it was a level higher than other Tianjiaos. At the same level, North Xiang was slightly stronger. But Wang Zhangji was already in a higher position. After the fishing rod in his hand disappeared, Yu Tiannu, who was sitting cross-legged on Maharaja's left palm, opened her eyes almost immediately and sprang to her feet. She vigilantly looked around before her eyes rested on Jiang Wang. "You saved us?" she asked in a questioning tone. "Where's the man from before?" Jiang Wang looked at his empty palm and stared blankly for a moment. Then he stood up and said, "He's gone." "How did you defeat him?" Yu Tiannu asked. Then she realized that it was inappropriate to ask. She added, I mean, this man is very mysterious and not easy to deal with. Jiang Wang was very honest. He said directly, we didn't fight. He left after we talked for a while. Who is that man? Do you know him? Yu Tiannu asked again. I know him, but I'm not sure if he's willing to let you know, so please forgive me for not telling you. Jiang Wang's tone was very sincere. Although Yu Tiannu felt a little regretful, she nodded to show that she understood. She said, Wu Ling and Gu Feng. Wu Ling has been eliminated. Gu Feng's whereabouts are unknown for now, but I don't think he'll appear in front of us again. Yu Tiannu looked at him deeply. I didn't expect you to be able to do this under those circumstances. There was some luck involved. Fate never favors the weak. Yu Tiannu sighed and said, I was going to look for you after I recovered 80% of my power. I didn't expect to run into those two. Two people. Jiang Wang frowned, but he didn't pay much attention to it. It was normal to bring along a helper to participate in the Mountain Sea realm. Not everyone was like Do Zhao, who pursued challenges. But there was only one person who did it. Yu Tiannu said, Do you mind talking about your fight? Jiang Wang asked with great interest. Although I don't mind. I don't have any experience with it. Although Yu Tiannu's voice was still unnatural, she couldn't hide the disappointment in her heart. He walked over alone, and my spirit was quickly defeated. He didn't know how he had failed. When I woke up, it was already now. Jiang Wang was very surprised because Yu Tiannu was definitely not weak. Even if her godly soul was slightly weaker, she should not have been crushed like this. Only now did he understand what Wang Zhangji had said. He told me, Jiang Wang said, you are actually very strong, but your spirit is very weak. I think he took advantage of your weakness and took advantage of it. Impossible. I admit that he is strong, but he can't judge me so carelessly and look down on me. Does he know what he is saying? But how arrogant is he to win in such a realm? How ignorant! Yu Tiannu was agitated like never before. Her eyes were frighteningly serious. However, she quickly suppressed her emotions. I'm sorry, she looked at Jiang Wang and said, I'm not targeting you. It's not that I can't accept my failure. But with all due respect, in terms of divine soul, even you and North Xiang, who have long been famous in divine soul cultivation, are not stronger than me. Do you know that in my current realm, I can already form a pure land? In Buddhism, this can only be done by the Golden Body God. I'm just telling you what he said. If I offended you in any way, I apologize, Jiang Wang said sincerely. But I think he said it out of kindness. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said it. Yu Tiannu's eyes were strange. Sometimes they were confused, sometimes they were painful, and sometimes they were determined. It was a gaze that was filled with a sense of fragmentation. Finally, she said, I was rude. It's just like what you see and think. My body is a puppet. My divine soul was also reconstructed. I shouldn't exist anymore, but I force myself to exist. I demand perfection at this moment. I want a kind of success too much. I may have fallen into some kind of paranoia. I may have fallen into the myth of Tao. I can't control my emotions. Maybe my Zen mind has already been broken. I'm sorry. She landed on the surface of the sea. She put her palms together and bowed to Jiang Wang seriously. I'm sorry for my rudeness. Jiang Wang stood where he was and did not move. After accepting this bow, he said, I shouldn't have accepted your bow, Zen Master. But I took the scolding for him, so I'll accept this bow for him. He left behind a suggestion. I wonder if Zen Master is still willing to listen? Yu Tiannu looked ashamed. She put her palms together and lowered her head. I don't have the face to accept it, but this body is really embarrassing. Please enlighten me. My friend said that as long as I tell you these 8 words, you will naturally understand. Jiang Wang said word by word, comprehend the treasure of self, the spirit vessel of self. Yu Tianyu looked like she had been struck by lightning. She was stunned and speechless for a long time. The gray robe covered her body. Her face, which had a brass luster, was really an exquisite puppet creation. One could not see anything different about her from a human. Jiang Wang had already moved his gaze away. He looked at Zhuo Guangxu, who was in the right palm of the mechanical Kuroga. He could not help but laugh. "What are you staring at?" From the speed of awakening, one could roughly see the difference between Zhuo Guangxu and Yu Tianyu's spirit. Yu Tianyu was not exaggerating when she said that her spirit was powerful. It was no wonder that she could not accept the fact that her spirit had a major flaw. The childishness on his face was what made Zhuo Guangxu different from the others in the Mountain Sea realm. He was the youngest and had the least experience. At this moment, he, who had just woken up, was sitting in the giant palm of the mechanical Kuroga. He felt helpless and helpless, although the robe was noble, although the puppet was majestic. He looked down at the familiar figure standing on the surface of the sea. Tears almost rolled out of his eyes, but he forced them back. "I'm a burden. Big brother Jiang," he said. This proud young man had obviously been dealt a heavy blow in this trip to the Mountain Sea realm. When he encountered strange beasts, he could only run. When he was besieged, he could only rely on Jiang Wang to lure the beasts away. When he encountered Dou Zhao, he could only wait for Jiang Wang to save him. Not to mention that when he was ambushed by Wu Ling and Gufeng, he was still unconscious. He had finally woken up and wanted to save his big brother. In the end, he encountered a random person who he did not know and was easily crushed. It was really difficult for him to convince himself that he could be like him. He felt a great sense of depression. He doubted his courage and faith all this time. Jiang Wang stepped lightly on the surface of the sea and leaped up. He landed gracefully in front of Zhuo Guangxu. Maharoga's palm was big enough for him to stand on. He bent down and bent two fingers with a smile. He knocked on Zhuo Guangxu's smooth forehead. Knock, knock. Then he tilted his head and made a gesture of listening carefully. Then he frowned and said, "That's not right. Why don't I hear the sound of water?" Zhuo Guangxu's tearful mood disappeared in an instant. "What?" He couldn't help but slap Jiang Wang's hand away. "Do you know how old I am this year?" Jiang Wang looked at him with an exaggerated expression. "I've been working hard since I was a child. I'm many years older than you. You want to catch up to me now and not be a burden to me? How dare you think about it? Aren't you looking down on me too much? I'm the #1 Inner Palace disciple destined to leave my name in history." Zhuo Guangxu was speechless for a moment. "If you ask me, you really don't have anything to feel bad about," Jiang Wang said proudly. "There are many people in the world who can't compare to you, big brother Jiang." From the south to the north, from the east to the west, and for the next few hundred years, there are people like Wang Yiwu, Qin Zhizhen, Huang Sheli, Xiang Bei, Wu Ling. I can't even count them. They're all the Tianjiao of the country, young heroes. I don't see anyone who can't survive. What are you so proud of? Zhuo Guangxu gritted his teeth. I'll surpass you sooner or later. Knock. Jiang Wang flicked him on the head and said with a smile, "It's a promise." Zhuo Guangxu hatefully thought, "I'll definitely flick him back in the future." He couldn't help but grit his teeth. His head hurt, but his heart was really warm. If there was a bright moon in the Mountain Sea realm, tonight would be a very good night. Walking on the mirror-like surface of the water, Wang Zhangji inexplicably thought. You entered the inner palace in the same year as him. You should be very familiar with him, right? He asked casually. I'm very familiar with him. Fang Heling was still following behind Wang Zhangji. Stepping on the water, he made a very small sound that spread in the quiet night. He was like this when he didn't use the hatred theurgy. He wasn't ugly, but of course, he wasn't outstanding enough. He didn't have any unforgettable temperament. He gave people the feeling that he was taciturn. he said slowly. Back then, I once regarded him as an enemy, an opponent that I had to defeat. I've also been working hard toward that goal. Even someone like Wang Zhangji was stunned for a moment. He probably felt that it was too unrealistic. He and my cousin Fang Pengju are sworn brothers. There are a total of 5 of them. The oldest one is like a good old man. He's called Ling He. The other one is addicted to alcohol and has a very bad temper. He's called Du Yehu. The other one is very beautiful. He's called Zhao Ruqing. They're very famous in the Tao Academy's outer sect. They're called the 5 heroes of Maple Forest. Fang Heling shook his head as he spoke. There was a very inexplicable smile at the corner of his mouth. Very old-fashioned, right? It's like a small character in a storyteller's story. Wang Zhangji didn't speak for a moment. Back when he was in Maple Forest City, he lived in seclusion and didn't care about anything. He didn't know anything about things outside the Wang clan's ancestral land, nor did he care. Wang Zhangxiang would often tell him some nonsense, but he would also deliberately avoid things related to the Tao Academy. The 5 heroes of Maple Forest. As Fang Heling said, it was a little old-fashioned, but it also had a youthful air. He could almost outline what Jiang Wang was like back then from Fang Heling's description. Just like Jiang Wang himself said, he was still very stupid and gullible back then. Including Fang Heling behind him, how many people had the white bone evil god changed, but I'm very envious. Fang Heling didn't know what Wang Zhangji was thinking. He continued, I really want to join them. At this point, he paused. It was as if at this moment, he was sorting through time and finally seeing his young self clearly. Then he said, So actually, at first, I didn't think that the name was old-fashioned. I thought it was very impressive. I wanted to be one of the 6 heroes of Maple Forest. But they often ignored me. I couldn't jump into that circle no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't become them, so I let myself look down on them. So later, when I entered the inner academy, I told myself that I must make them look me in the eye. He spread his hands as if to say, so that's how I was back then. I accepted that I used to be like this. And then? Wang Zhangji seemed to be very interested in these things that weren't very interesting. And then? Fang Heling lowered his eyes and didn't continue. He changed the topic and said, Now when I think about those things I feel that it's meaningless. The self-esteem of youth isn't worth mentioning. If that didn't happen, I'd rather be ignored by them forever. The self-esteem of youth was actually very valuable. But everyone was different. Wang Zhangji especially understood. Even if Fang Heling voluntarily lowered himself into the dust, his choice wasn't despicable. After thinking, he asked, Why would they ignore you? Who knows? Fang Heling shook his head. Maybe it's because I'm not talented enough and they look down on me. Maybe they want to avenge my cousin? Avenge your cousin? The head of the Fang clan at that time was my father. Fang Heling's voice lowered. He loved me very much. Everything he did for my sake. He tilted the clan's resources to me and not to my more talented cousin. My cousin distanced himself from me because of this. The 5 of them were very close, so they were hostile to me. Now that I think about it, it's normal. What about before your cousin distanced himself from you? Wang Zhangji asked. Didn't you say that they always ignored you? What was the reason before your cousin distanced himself from you? I don't know. Fang Heling shook his head and smiled. Maybe it's because I'm a good-for-nothing. Wang Zhangji stopped and said slowly, You still don't know me well enough. If you know me, you should know that I can't take pleasure in looking down on you. Not only that, but no matter what you do, you can't affect my emotions. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm sorry. Fang Heling immediately bowed and apologized. I'm used to looking down on myself. It has nothing to do with you. I will change, I will definitely change. Why don't you ask yourself? Wang Zhangji said. Fang Heling froze for a moment and then said, Ask what? Ask Jiang Wang and the others why they ignored you at that time. Fong Heling looked down at the water shadow. I never thought about it. You don't seem to want to face Jiang Wang, Wang Zhangji said. I don't know. Do you hate him? Or hate him? Fong Heling was silent for a long time and said, probably jealousy. There was a faint wind, but it quickly dissipated like ripples on the water. Chapter 1462. The mechanical Kuroja flew through the air. Jiang Wang was still sitting on the head of the snake, his legs casually crossed. His left hand leaned on the sword, his right hand on his knee, his eyes looking forward, his mind wandering. He was thinking about what Wang Zhangji had said. There are some problems with this world. What problems were there? Wang Zhangji did not speak in detail, as if he could not say it out loud. This mountain, this sea, this sky, and those strange beasts, even the fire lotus he had eaten, the seal technique he had learned, everything was so real that it could not be more real. What was the problem Wang Zhangji spoke of? Cultivating the fire origin diagram allowed Jiang Wang's control of fire to advance by leaps and bounds. But it was also the fire origin diagram that restricted his understanding of fire. After comprehending the mysteries of the true Samadhi fire, he also understood a principle. What one knows and sees is also bound. This awareness made the road ahead clear all of a sudden. Although there was no real increase in battle strength. But from then on, knowledge was rarely bound. There was this process of delay in cultivation. He would always remember to remind himself not to be bound by knowledge. Now, he tried to go around everything he knew and reconsider the entire Mountain Sea realm. Everyone knew that the Mountain Sea realm was Huang Weizhen's legacy. Whether it was a world he had discovered or a world he had created, in short, this world was closely related to Huang Weizhen. The mysterious seal technique left on the mountain god wall was something Jiang Wang had personally experienced. When he first entered the Mountain Sea realm, because he did not have time to familiarize himself with the relevant information, he had always followed Zhuo Guangshu. Later, when they were separated, he began to think more. But the questions he pondered were, what is the purpose of Huang Weizhen leaving behind this test? Would Huang Weizhen leave anything here? If I were Huang Weizhen, what conditions would I use to select a successor, and so on. Now, what if he stripped away Huang Weizhen's influence and reconsidered this world? If he had never met the Trident, never came to the Mountain Sea realm, never went to Zhangji Mountain, did not know Huang Weizhen, then how would everything evolve? He inexplicably believed in Wang Zhangji's judgment. This world probably had some problems, even if he could not figure out where the problems were. Wang Zhangji had mentioned that the more copies of the 9-chapter Jade Annulus he had, the better he would be able to protect himself. Was that a hint? While he was thinking, he would occasionally lower his head to take a look. Zhuo Guangshu sat cross-legged on Maharaga's palm as he cultivated. Occasionally, he would take out a small object from his bosom and carefully stroke it. After stroking it for a moment, Zhang Xian placed it back and continued cultivating. It was said that Chu Shunhua had placed it in Do Zhao's pocket before the battle. This kid Yu Tiannu sat on Maharaga's other hand. Ever since Jiang Wang relayed Wang Zhangji's words to her, comprehend your own precious nature, your body is the spiritual boat. She didn't talk much anymore. No one knew what she was thinking. He had been meditating there. In short, the three of them each had their own concerns. The worries of spring, the worries of autumn, the worries of youth. Such a team with little morale and fighting spirit approached the North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain in silence. Because Zhuo Guangshu, Chu Shun, and Huai Tiannu had already found the Heavenly Mountain before, they had roughly determined the location of the North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain. Although the Mountain Sea realm was very chaotic, Yu Tiannu also had her own unique method. Jiang Wang was thinking and observing. His mood was actually relatively relaxed. Now that Yu Tianyu and Zhuo Guangxu had both recovered, as long as they weren't surrounded by strange beasts, the three of them together had nothing to fear. As for what was wrong with this world, no matter what, the world left behind by Huang Weizhen couldn't have deliberately harmed the Chu Tianjiao. Even Dou Zhao, who had reappeared in the modern world and brought down the glory of the number 1 killing technique, was here. What did he have to worry about? If he retreated, then so be it. If he advanced, he had 2 pieces of the 9-chapter jade disc in hand. At worst, he could just leave early. In any case, he had already obtained many benefits. There was nothing to be greedy about. Who knew how long it would take to cultivate the Calamity Seal and the Baifeng Seal? In short, there was room to advance and retreat. Thus, the world widened. He could use a broader mindset to observe this world. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of thousands of horses galloping suddenly crashed into his ears. Jiang Wang didn't make a sound. He waited until a white stream appeared in his field of vision. It was a waterfall hanging down from a majestic floating mountain. It erupted from the waist of the mountain all the way to the foot of the mountain. The foot of this floating mountain was surrounded by a river that was hundreds of feet wide. It was like a moat. The waterfall hung upside down and directly crashed into the river. It shattered the floating ice and gave off such an intense sound. It could be heard far and near. A river surrounding a mountain was a strange thing. There were many floating mountains in the mountain and sea scripture, but floating water was the first. It was clear, transparent, and flowing like broken jade. It rushed around the mountain, but it hung in the air and outlined an invisible river. Heaven and earth were different. Looking at the wonders of the world was one of the joys of cultivation. It was also cultivation itself. The more one saw, the more one could touch the essence of the world. Maharaga stopped. Yu Tianyu and Zhuo Guangxu both opened their eyes. They had arrived at the North Pole's heavenly cabinet mountain. Speaking of which, Yu Tianyu's mechanism 8 all had the strength of the outer building. Unfortunately, none of the opponents they met in the mountain and sea realm were ordinary. Therefore, when these mechanisms were released, no matter who they faced, they would all be destroyed. The gold and silver thrown in, the debris after the collapse, was truly a money disappearing like water. Thinking of this, Jiang Wang couldn't help but think of his own Immortal Palace strongman even more. In his opinion, the most outstanding thing about the Immortal Palace strongman was that it was immortal and indestructible. Although the materials were hard to find, once the forging was successful, there would be no need to invest more. Compared to those fragile puppets, how much money would be saved? Keep an eye on the materials for the Immortal Palace strongman. Immortal Master Zhang's voice rolled through the ruins of the Cloud-top Immortal Palace like a heavenly decree. Cloud Child, who was sleeping in the Azure Cloud Pavilion, was shocked. He jumped up on his butt and then sat back down on the ground, bouncing a few times. He blinked his sleepy eyes. After a long time, he realized what order he had received. He couldn't help but pull a long face. How could he dare to be angry? Above the Maharaga's head, Jiang Wang sized up the floating mountain before him and cautiously asked, "Is the thing your grandfather prepared for you still here?" "It's here." Zhuo Guangxu jumped down from the Maharaga's palm, an eager expression on his face. Jiang Wang flew down as well. He couldn't help but glance at the Maharaga. For scouting, its body was too large, and it was very easy to discover. For battle, the battle on the North Pole's heavenly cabinet mountain was definitely related to the mountain god of this mountain. The Maharaga's usefulness was also limited. This kind of Buddhist sect puppet, which was expensive to make, was practically useless in high-level battles. In the mountain and sea realm, it was mostly used as a vehicle. It really wasn't worth it. Of course, the vast majority of people in this world who weren't from the Mahist sect and carried puppets with them to battle usually wouldn't consider the question of whether it was worth it or not. Yu Tianyu casually put away the mechanical Maharaga and flew to Jiang Wang's side. For some reason, she explained, if there's only one mechanical sect, it's true that its usefulness is limited in high-level battles. But if I can gather all 8 mechanical sects and create the 8 divine sects, it'll be very powerful. It can further perfect my Pure Land. Jiang Wang was somewhat surprised, but he only said, then I'm very much looking forward to it. What are you surprised about? Yu Tiannu asked again. Whether I or someone else thinks highly of this mechanical sect puppet or not. Zen Master Yu doesn't seem like someone who cares about these things. Jiang Wang spoke the truth, then added, although I haven't interacted much with Zen Master, in my impression, you shouldn't even ask such a question. This was especially true for matters like the 8 divine sects and perfecting the Pure Land, which involved the structure of the future battle system. Although they weren't secrets that couldn't be spoken of, they still couldn't be casually mentioned to others. This implied a certain level of trust and intimacy. This was especially difficult for the apathetic and rational Yu Tiannu. I'll learn to care about it in the future. Yu Tiannu bent her finger and knocked on her temple, making a knocking sound. Capturing emotions is one of the puppet's abilities, based on a natural reaction of a formation pattern. I think since I'm using this as my body, I should also integrate my emotions. For example, curiosity, honor, and disgrace. Zen Master seems to have changed a little, Jiang Wang said. I hope it's a good change, Yu Tiannu said. Whether it's good or not is often relative, Jiang Wang said casually. If Zen Master thinks it's good, then it's good. Yu Tiannu's face was covered in divine light, and she sighed sincerely. Benefactor, you are very wise. The image of a yellow-faced old monk suddenly appeared in Jiang Wang's mind, and he laughed with his hands on his hips. This woman is right. He couldn't help but speed up and fly to Zhuo Guangshu's side. Beasts that have been bestowed with divine names are not simple, we have to be careful. Zhuo Guangshu also lowered his voice cautiously. We won't fight directly, we just need to think of a way to get a few 9 phoenix feathers. Jiang Wang let out a sigh of relief. Of course, his confidence came mainly from Du Kuai. With the strength of the 3 of them, working together, and with the things that Du Kuai specially prepared, it shouldn't be difficult to get 1 or 2 feathers. The floating river around the mountain was like a jade belt that spread out in front of them. The 3 of them flew across the river and stepped onto the Tiangue mountain in the North Pole. Like 3 light feathers, they landed on the snowy ground without a sound. The uninvited guests were all on guard. It was like this outside, and it was also like this inside. When Jiang Wang visited the 9 Phoenixes floating mountain, he didn't know that there were outsiders visiting his 5 prefectures. See, in the cloud-top immortal palace, a white and chubby boy walked out of the azure cloud pavilion with a master's pace, humming. I was originally a lazy person beside the immortal palace, relying on my ability to enjoy a life of ease, gluttony, and good sleep. He walked very reluctantly. After all, he was already sick of the ruins. But he still had to walk a few steps, otherwise that Jiang Bapi would say that he was a glutton and lazy. Actually, when he thought about it, after following Immortal Master Jiang for so long, he didn't eat anything. Even that little bit of vitality was cut off with the collapse of the ethereal palace. Every day, he would eat a few mouthfuls of good fortune azure cloud like cotton candy. After eating too much, he would get sick of it. That Jiang guy couldn't even guarantee that his Dharma robe was intact, let alone the recovery of the cloud-top immortal palace. His unparalleled little white cloud had already seen through it. Miserable, miserable. The song he sang became more and more sorrowful. Since I followed this immortal master, I've been so busy that my hands can't stop and my mouth can't speak. Running to the east and running to the west can't bring me peace. What else is there to say? You're so pitiful, a voice suddenly said. Who? White Cloud Child immediately stopped his song. His clever little eyes kept turning, and he was very vigilant. You should know who I am. You have an ancient aura on you. The voice was erratic, as if it would be cut off at any time, and it was impossible to determine the direction. Humph, humph. Cloud Child snorted twice in a profound manner, although he was already cursing in his heart. Who the hell do you think you are? Jiang Shu or Ji Fengzhou? Why should this immortal child know you? But his face was expressionless. After following Immortal Master Jiang, he didn't learn anything else, but he should at least have this ability. Sad, lamentable, the voice said. White Cloud Child was completely confused now, and he couldn't easily contact the Immortal Master to avoid alerting the enemy. He could only follow the conversation and ask, "What's the lamentable one? What's the lamentable one?" The voice sighed and said, "You have a glorious history, a great inheritance. Why are you here as a slave?" White Cloud Child blinked his eyes. Looking at the broken walls and broken tiles in front of him, he really couldn't use the words glorious and great to describe it. He couldn't help but feel that he had met a lunatic. Do you think I don't know what my family is like? But this lunatic obviously had some tricks up his sleeve, otherwise, how could he hide from the Immortal Master and directly talk to him in the Immortal Master's 5 residency? He knew that he couldn't expose himself, and he definitely couldn't say that he didn't know much about the Cloud Top Immortal Palace. Often, he had to see specific things to find the corresponding memory fragment. So he asked, "Oh?" This little fat boy's attitude was really unfathomable. The mysterious voice pondered for a while, and then sighed in an especially amiable tone, "How did you end up like this?" It seemed that no matter who it was, when they had a favor to ask of others, their temper would become very good. White Cloud Child thought, just like a certain Immortal Master. But he really didn't resonate with the so-called, "end up like this," mentioned by the mysterious voice. The welcoming boy who had struggled for generations for the Cloud Top Immortal Palace had long disappeared. Speaking of which, he was already a new existence, and he had only absorbed a part of the memory fragments about the Immortal Palace itself. Even those memory fragments were intermittent, and they weren't real, and he had never experienced the prosperity of the Immortal Palace era. If he was born like this, how could he end up like this? Of course, if he had to say this. The current Cloud Top Immortal Palace was even more damaged than when the Immortal Master had just gathered the 3 Immortal Palaces. Could it be considered a kind of end up like this? Thinking of this, White Cloud Child finally had a kind of sad emotion. He heaved a sigh, but didn't say anything. Alas! The mysterious voice's attitude was very positive, and it said again, "I can help you." White Cloud Child continued to be unfathomable. The mysterious voice said, "My great power isn't something you can measure, and the things I can do are beyond your imagination. You don't have to have any scruples." Obviously, this sentence couldn't be said anymore. White Cloud Child thought seriously and then asked, "Who are you? Why do you want to help me? How can you help me?" "It doesn't matter who I am, and it doesn't matter why I want to help you. The important thing is," the mysterious voice said, "do you want to change this situation? Do you want to get rid of this life of living under someone else's roof? Do you want to exchange your life with this body and enjoy the endless glory? Do you want real freedom?" Chapter 1463. Freedom. There seemed to be raging waves in the 5 resident seas. Of course, it was just an illusion. This mysterious voice was rhythmic and full of emotions. It had a bewitching quality to it. It seemed to be able to stir the lake in one's heart and stir up raging waves. Who didn't want freedom in this world? Who was willing to live in a fence? Who was willing to live under someone else's roof? Little White Cloud was willing. What was wrong with eating, drinking, singing songs, and sunbathing every day? The mysterious voice said something about exchanging lives. These words were simply terrifying. When he thought of the pain and despair that the Immortal Master had experienced, Child White Cloud couldn't help but feel numb and a chill run down his spine. Others might only see Immortal Master Zhang's glory and say that Tianjiao was the best. As a child of the Immortal Palace, he had seen and heard too much of the new cloud-top Immortal Palace. There was no endless glory. He was clearly being hunted down endlessly, being beaten endlessly. You don't have to be afraid. With me here, he can't hurt you anymore. Child White Cloud's frightened expression showed that he had been misunderstood. The mysterious voice comforted him. You were born free. Child White Cloud came back to his senses and asked, "What kind of freedom?" The voice suddenly came from the sky and became vast and majestic. The freedom to control your own fate. Control my own fate. Child White Cloud murmured and asked again, "Who are you?" I've already said that it doesn't matter who I am. You should ask yourself, who do you want to be? But, Child White Cloud looked up at the sky. If I don't even know who you are, how can I believe that you can help me? These words made sense. The mysterious voice paused for a while and suddenly said, "Look up." The North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain was covered in snow. The temperature was so low that it turned into frost. If you casually condensed a ball of water, it would turn into ice and fall into the snow before it could reach your hand. All kinds of exotic flowers and herbs were still blooming brilliantly. Jiang Wang and Zhuo Guangshu had adapted to all kinds of extreme environments in the mountain and sea purgatory. Yu Tiannu's puppet body was also not affected at all. It had been some time since they entered the mountain, and the sound of the river flowing around the mountain had already been left behind. The waterfall hanging on the mountain was like a curtain. He could still see it when he turned around, but it was getting more and more indistinct through the gaps between the trees. The three of them walked close to the ground, advancing in a triangular formation. Each of them was responsible for observing an area. Although he said he was walking, he actually didn't even step on the snow. Zhuo Guangshu's luxurious robes fluttered in the wind. With every step he took, steam would rise from his feet. His handsome face was slightly red from the frost, but his eyes were firm, just like a man in a painting. While the mist was carrying him forward, it was also constantly feeding him information about water. Flowers, stones, trees, grass, wherever there was water, there would be an echo. On the other hand, Jiang Wang strolled leisurely, as if he was walking on clouds, extremely confident and at ease. He listened to the sounds in his ears, and observed the scenery in his eyes. As he moved forward, his body instinctively made adjustments to ensure that he could react as quickly as possible at any time and in any environment. It wasn't hard for others to notice the terrifying killing power contained in his confident posture. Yu Tiannu was different from them. She flew directly off the ground, 3 inches away from the snow. Her speed was constant, and there were no fluctuations. Indeed, no expression could be seen on her face, but very little information could escape her grasp. The positions between the three of them were also constantly adjusted. Basically, at any moment, the distance between the three of them was the same. Gray robes, green robes, and blue luxurious robes flowed on the frosty white mountain, creating a very harmonious sense of beauty. If there was a painter's pen, this scene of climbing the mountain in the snow would be a famous painting. And such a painting appeared in the cloud-top Immortal Palace, floating in front of Child of the Clouds. Child of the Clouds really couldn't understand. What do you want me to see? Watch you paint? Do you think you're awesome just because you paint well? That Wu Ling's handwriting was also very good. It was either gorgeous and beautiful or with strong strokes. Wasn't he still blown to death by my immortal master? The painting is really good, that. Child of the Clouds opened his mouth. Rip, there was such a sound. This painting scroll was right in front of him. It was completely torn apart, torn into 2 halves. And outside, in the real mountain sea realms, Tiangue Mountain at the North Pole. Crack, crack, crack. A loud sound suddenly came from the entire Tiangue Mountain at the North Pole. A huge crack began to spread from the top of the mountain and quickly extended to the foot of the mountain. The entire Tiangue Mountain at the North Pole, The legendary mountain in the Mountain Sea realm's records of strange beasts, cracked. The mountain that stretched for dozens of miles directly cracked in front of Jiang Wang and the other two, as if it was cut in half by an invisible long knife. But the two halves didn't fall. They still followed some kind of law and floated in the sky. Large amounts of snow slid down like broken jade and flowing gems. They surged for a moment, floating in the air and fluttering about. The river that wound around the mountain was elongated, and still surged without stopping. Jiang Wang and the others were on one side of the mountain. They looked at the other side and were stunned for a moment. A huge canyon formed between the two mountains. People here looked down at the blue sea, the clouds, and the falling snow. However, although it was beautiful, the three people climbing the mountain were not in the mood to appreciate it. During the process of the mountain collapsing and the earth cracking, Jiang Wang didn't feel any external influence at all. It was like a natural change of the mountain, like the movement of the mountain. But why did the floating mountain crack? And why was it so coincidental that it cracked just after they climbed the mountain? In the cloud-top Immortal Palace, Bai Yuntong looked at the scene outside Master Zhang's body, and was stunned for a moment. As for the picture scroll floating in front of him, it silently disappeared. "Did you see it?" The mysterious voice said, "This is my power. Even if you are the immortal master in front of me, you are only an ant. It's too easy for me to help you." "Then hurry up and help me." Bai Yuntong suddenly became excited. "Help me repair this immortal palace first, then make me a master immortal body that can walk in the modern world. Pass on invincible power to me so that I can eat and sleep whenever I want. No one will dare to scold me." The mysterious voice said, "Only the strong will be helped by the heavens. Is there anything in the world that can be reaped without sowing? I've given you great power. If you don't have the temperament to match the power, it's no different from creating a tragedy. It's harming you instead of helping you." "What do you mean?" Bai Yuntong was stunned. "Are you going to help me or not?" The mysterious voice said, "Your freedom also requires your own effort. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "What do you need me to do?" Bai Yuntong asked directly. "Let me say this first. I'm born with stomach problems. I can't take any hardship." The mysterious voice must have wanted to strangle this little fatty to death, but it didn't. It only replied, "There's no need to take any hardship. And I'm very timid. I'm afraid of everything, but the thing I'm most afraid of is pain. It doesn't hurt." Bai Yuntong heaved a sigh of relief. "Then how do you want to help me?" The mysterious voice said, "Let go of yourself and accept my divine seal. Use the power of this immortal palace to bring me in. I'll personally help you break the shackles." "I don't know how to." Bai Yuntong blinked his eyes and looked very innocent. "Why not?" "How do I let go of myself?" The mysterious voice was very patient. "Just don't let your thoughts run wild. Calm yourself down and let down your guard. The more I don't think about it, the more I think about it. How about this? When the time comes, you can count sheep in your heart and focus on counting. Leave the rest to me." "Oh. Then how do I use the power of the immortal palace to bring you in?" "You don't know how to control the power of the immortal palace. Or you don't know how to bring me in. This immortal palace has no power at all. I don't know how to bring you in." The mysterious voice was silent for a long time this time. Bai Yuntong faintly heard words like pig, but it was very faint and he couldn't hear clearly. "Hello? Are you still there?" Bai Yuntong asked politely. "I'm here." The mysterious voice sighed. "I'm thinking of how to help you better. Poor little kid, you've been imprisoned for too long. As a result, your ability and brain are not complete." Bai Yuntong was speechless. He resisted the urge to pull out the small sword and asked innocently, "You haven't told me yet. How do I use the power of the immortal palace to bring you in?" The mysterious voice said, "I'll teach you a set of restrictions first. If you practice it well, it should help you control the power of this immortal palace. When the time comes, I'll transfer the power. You just need to cooperate. Aren't you talking to me in the immortal palace now? I'm already here. Why do you need me to bring you in again? I mean, I might be a little slow to learn things. I'm talking to you in a very distant place. I'm not in the immortal palace. You're not here? Then how are you talking to me? My greatness is something you can't imagine. So, study hard. I'll bring you to a bright future. The mysterious voice was obviously running out of patience. It said perfunctorily, "Remember this incantation." Bai Yuntong recited the incantation of dozens of words more than 20 times. He recited it until the mysterious voice was numb. Finally, he recited it word for word. His white and chubby little face was full of confidence. He was very enthusiastic. When shall we do it? In my opinion, it's better to do it now. The mysterious voice hurriedly said, "Child, now is not the time. You have to be patient. When the time comes, I'll come again to remind you." Time? What time? When the time comes, you'll know. Then it dispersed. There was no response. Why do you think this mountain suddenly cracked open? Jiang Wang asked with a frown as he stood on the other side of the canyon. I can't sense any trace of external force, Zhuo Guangshu said. It's some kind of law that's broken. The mountain is just a manifestation of the broken law. After pondering for a long time, Yu Tiannu said, I can't be sure if it broke naturally or if it's controlled by someone. If it's the latter, the power is not something we can resist. You're right. Jiang Wang said, since there's no point in worrying, then don't worry. Yu Tiannu thought, I didn't say that. But it's true. Jiang Wang asked again, with such a big commotion, where's the mountain god? Why didn't the 9-headed phoenix appear? Also, it's too quiet. We didn't make a sound all the way here. Now that the mountain has cracked open, there's still no sound. The mountain god's anger, the pain, and fear of the living beings on the mountain were all gone. Although there were flowers, grass, and trees on this mountain, it seemed to be a dead mountain. It wasn't as lively as the barren Mount Zhuang. Yes. Yu Tiannu also said, it's too quiet. Zhuo Guangshu held a silver cylinder in his hand. It contained something specially prepared for the 9-headed phoenix. Hearing this, he said, it's indeed very strange. There are 2 mountain gods on the North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain. One is Chongliang, and the other is the 9-headed phoenix. We entered the mountain from the side of the icefall and entered the 9-headed phoenix's territory. The 9-headed phoenix loves to sing, so it's usually not too quiet. The snow on the North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain was very deep. Along the way, the shallowest part was more than 3 feet. There were no traces on the snow other than broken branches and fallen leaves. The 3 of them were scattered on this endless snowy mountain. They couldn't even be considered as a speck of mud. Now, there was indeed no useful information to be found on the broken section of the mountain. Could it be that they went on a long journey? Jiang Wang casually livened up the atmosphere. Visiting relatives or something. These gods usually don't leave their territory. Zhuo Guangshu blurted out the common knowledge of the mountain sea realm. The more he said, the less confident he became. This was because since entering the mountain sea realm, he had seen too many strange beasts running around. At first, he could determine the general direction from the movements of the Luo fish and the Huang Bei. Later, he saw the Kuei running wildly and the Hua fighting army roaring. He couldn't determine the direction at all. We're very likely wasting time, Yu Tiannu said. Due to the lessons of the mountain sea realm beasts, they had been very cautious since they came up the mountain. The efficiency of their exploration was very low. They waited until the mountain suddenly split open, but found nothing. Jiang Wang looked back at the snow and frost trees and raised his hand. Chirp, chirp, chirp. A long line of fiery red flame sparrows flew out, chirping as they jumped to various parts of the snowy mountain. At the same time, He activated the immortal sound state to listen to all sounds. After a while, he shook his head. There's nothing related to the nine-headed phoenix. I don't even hear the sound of living things. Yu Tiannu also put her palms together and chanted softly. A golden ripple quickly spread out from her palms and spread out in all directions. This included the half of the mountain behind them and the broken half of the mountain opposite them. The golden light spread silently and quickly. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared from sight. After a long time, Yu Tiannu opened her palms and said slowly, "The nine-headed phoenix and Chongliang are not here, and there are no other creatures. If they didn't deliberately hide, that's basically the case." Guangshu, does the nine-headed phoenix really exist on the North Pole, Heavenly Cabinet Mountain? Jiang Wang asked. Zhuo Guangshu said, "It does exist. There are detailed records of the Mountain Sea Realm beast. People have seen the nine-headed phoenix in the Mountain Sea Realm before. This is the target I chose after thinking about it repeatedly. It's impossible for us to come in without even confirming this. There must be some changes that we don't know about. A change that involves the entire Mountain Sea Realm has already happened," Jiang Wang muttered. The three of them were shrouded in a layer of shadow. Who turned the North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain into a dead mountain? With the strength of the Mountain Sea Realm beast. Who could erase both Chongliang and the nine-headed phoenix at the same time without leaving a trace? The Kuei bull thundered for thousands of miles and swallowed volcanoes. When the Luo fish passed, the flood accompanied it. Although the Baifeng died, there were charred bones on the mountain. There was nothing left on the North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain. There was only the vast expanse of snow. It was clean. Jiang Wang inexplicably thought of the sentence he saw on Zhang Ji's mountain. "Stay in this house forever, the name of the gods bestowed by the heavens." There was no one to stay in this house? Where was the name of the gods? Jiang Ainan's birthday event has begun. Everyone can give Jiang Ainan a birthday cake. There will be a reward based on the level of the gift. Everyone, it depends on your mood. For details of the event, please see the event post in the Qidian book review section. Chapter 1464. The silence lasted for a while. After the mountain split, the Tiangue mountain in the North Pole became even quieter. At this time, Yu Tiannu said, "Do you remember what Dou Zhao said when he came to find us?" Zhuo Guangshu said thoughtfully. He said that Zhu Yan disappeared and some unknown changes happened in the Mountain Sea territory. He couldn't guarantee his harvest, so he started to steal the 9-chapter jade disc. The disappearance of the nine-headed phoenix and Chongliang was not an isolated case. Dou Zhao's target had also disappeared. This reminded Jiang Wang of a question he had thought about before. If he didn't come to the Mountain Sea territory and remove the influence he brought, what would happen to this world? For example, Sancha. With Sancha's cunning, he would have a good chance of killing Baifeng. If someone went to Zhangji Mountain in the future, they would only see Jiang Wang. Any real world was constantly changing. The Mountain Sea Realm was a world where it was difficult to distinguish between reality and reality. Naturally, there should be no exception. If the Mountain Sea Realm of today was exactly the same as the Mountain Sea Realm of 900 years ago, then this place was simply not real enough, and it would not have been able to confuse the past generations of geniuses. It was unreliable to follow the map with the records of the strange beasts of the mountains and seas. Jiang Wang asked, "Do we have to find the nine-headed phoenix?" Zhuo Guangshu said, "According to the original plan, I need to get the nine-headed phoenix feather first, then go to Withering South Abyss. Ignite the feather in Withering South Abyss, and we can get the clue of the nine-headed phoenix chapter." Withering South Abyss must be at the extreme south of this territory? Jiang Wang asked. Zhuo Guangshu said, "Withering South Abyss means Withering South Abyss. Of course, it's at the extreme south of this territory. However, the Mountain Sea territory is vast and unpredictable. It's hard for us to get there in a short time. So, if we go to Withering South Abyss, we have to take the path of God's descent, which is the Rainbow Bridge. They had to go to the Tiangue mountain in the North Pole to find the nine-headed phoenix and find a way to get the feather. Then, they had to find the path of God's descent, then go to Withering South Abyss and ignite the feather. Only then could they get the clue. The difficulty of obtaining the nine-headed phoenix chapter probably showed how precious it was. Plucking the feather was as difficult as seeking death. Jiang Wang had already experienced the strength of a mountain sea realm mountain god and sea god. If Zhuo Guangxu didn't have something that Duke Huai had specially prepared for Jiufeng, he wouldn't have had any hope for this trip at all. There was no need to mention where the path of God descent was. They might encounter a mountain god or sea god who was passing by. If they were in a bad mood, they might be crushed. As for Withering South Abyss, just from the name alone, it was extremely dangerous. Little Guangxu's goal was set so high, but he must have underestimated it. He didn't have enough understanding of his own strength and the difficulty of the mountain sea realm. But Duke Huai didn't remind him, and even helped to solve the difficult problem of Nine Phoenix. He should have his own considerations, according to Zhuo Guangxu's plan. Even if the matter was difficult to handle, at least there was still an idea. But now, the mountain sea realm had undergone an inexplicable change. The nine-headed phoenix had disappeared, and the North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain was empty. The first step of the plan had been cut off. No wonder Zhuo Guangxu was so confused. Thinking about it, Jiang Wang asked again, "The nine-headed phoenix has disappeared. Is there any other way to get the seal of the Nine Phoenix?" Zhuo Guangxu naturally considered this question. After the heaven collapse, those who can safely survive and successfully reach the central mountain can use the 9 jade disc in their hands to obtain Huang Weijian's legacy. I don't know what is in those legacy, but I think there might be a chance to get the seal of the Nine Phoenix. What is the heaven collapse? The sky here will collapse? You can understand it like that. The heaven collapse generally marks the end of the journey in the mountain sea realm. At that time, there will be all kinds of world-ending phenomena. The mountain gods and sea gods will have to stay in their own territory and use the power of the mountain sea to defend themselves. Outsiders can't survive outside the central mountain. In other words, Jiang Wang analyzed, in the end, all the survivors will meet at the central mountain? Zhuo Guangxu nodded. Will the heaven collapse happen every time? According to the information I gathered, it will happen every time. Zhuo Guangxu said, unless everyone leaves before then. Then there's still a chance, a very good chance. Jiang Wang said confidently, if the three of us work together, we won't need to be afraid of anyone. This kind of certainty undoubtedly gave people confidence. The difficulty of this journey in the mountain sea realm was beyond everyone's imagination. After entering the mountain sea realm, almost everyone learned a deep lesson. Zhuo Guangxu, who came from a famous family, began to doubt life, and even himself. Even Yu Tianyu, who came from a mysterious background, lost control of her emotions under the repeated blows. Only Jiang Wang was able to hold his head high even though he'd suffered defeat after defeat and was beaten to the point of fleeing time and time again, causing injuries to pile up all over his body. But he still held his head high and was filled with confidence towards the road ahead. What's the situation in the central mountain? Yu Tianyu asked. Zhuo Guangxu shook his head. I don't know, no one knows. In all the information, it only shows that there is such a place. In the past, those who participated in the mountain sea realm seemed to have successfully reached the central mountain, and naturally received a gift. It shouldn't be that simple, but I can't say for sure. Holding the 9 jade discs, entering the central mountain. Jiang Wang said thoughtfully, the more jade discs there are, the more choices there are. Zhuo Guangxu thought for a moment, then said, Huang Weijian's gift is like a 9-grid box covered with a black cloth. Every 9 jade discs can open a grid, and people can't see what's inside. They can only reach in and feel, and can only take one gift. Of course, the more jade discs there are, the more choices there are. The more jade discs you control, the more chances you have of getting what you want. Why can't we gather all the 9 jade discs together, and take turns to control them? Jiang Wang asked. Zhuo Guangshu said, because in the mountain sea realm, each jade disc can only be used once. Once any lattice is opened, it will disappear. Jiang Wang nodded. Zhuo Guangshu had already described it very vividly. There were 2 ways to get what one wanted in the mountain sea realm. One was the conventional way, like Zhuo Guangshu's plan, which was to first go to the North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain, then go to the Withering South Abyss. The other was to pass the Heaven Collapse, enter the Central Mountain, and use the 9 jade discs to get Huang Weijian's gift. The latter choice had a huge element of luck. The secret box that you opened might not have what you needed in it. Because there was no way to confirm the information in the Central Mountain, theoretically, people who entered the mountain sea realm should first choose the conventional way to get what they wanted. If they explored separately, as long as the things they wanted were different, there wouldn't be any conflicts. But there were always exceptions, and people wouldn't always follow the rational choice. For example, Tai Yin wanted to expel Jiang Wang as soon as possible, and Wuling Gufeng wanted to expel the strongest first. Dou Zhao, after confirming that he had lost track of Zhu Yan, didn't hesitate to start clearing the area. Yu Tiannu said, on the way here, Benefactor Jiang said that on the mountain god wall, he saw the 9 jade discs gathered in the mountain sea realm. Then according to young Master's was theory, all the grids can be opened. If we can successfully resist the heaven collapse and reach the central mountain, this time, Huang Weijian's gift should have the 9 phoenix seal. I think so. Jiang Wang said and looked at Zhuo Guangshu. Can the thing Duke Huai prepared for you be used to deal with Dou Zhao? Although he knew that if he had the help of Yu Tiannu and Zhuo Guangshu, he should be able to win against Dou Zhao. But first, Dou Zhao might find an ally, and second, it was better to be safe. The thing Duke Huai prepared to deal with the 9 phoenix should be powerful, and it should be more than enough to deal with Dou Zhao. But Zhuo Guangshu was silent. After a while, he shook the silver cylinder in his hand, and the sound of liquid swaying came from inside. Then he said, the use of this thing is to twist the base, and the liquid inside will fly out and automatically sprinkle on the target. As long as it touches the target, its feathers will fall. Jiang Wang didn't know what to say. Hair removal water? Who would have thought? The thing that Duke Huai specially prepared to deal with the 9 phoenix was actually so down to earth. But thinking about it carefully, it was impossible to bring such a powerful method into the mountain sea realm, otherwise it would have been a mess. Almost everyone who could enter the mountain sea realm had a background. Under the limited conditions, Duke Huai's method was really targeted. In any case, to avoid missing something, we have to personally search for it. We should personally search the mountain again. We can speed up, but we can't save the effort, Jiang Wang said in the end. But in his heart, he was thinking, would the heaven collapse be the time? When the sky collapsed and the earth collapsed, would they be able to see the true appearance of the mountain sea realm? Boom! Boom! The waterfall was still smashing the river around the mountain. Icicles flew everywhere, and water splashed everywhere. The 3 people who found nothing flew away from the North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain. Where to go next, there should be a plan. Jiang Wang said and looked at Yu Tiannu. There is no way to deal with the 9 phoenix feather for now. Zen Master, do you have any goals in coming to the mountain sea realm? Yu Tiannu shook her head lightly. I just want to see the scenery of Huang Weijian. I don't have any other requests. She originally wanted to take Chu Shunhua to the mountain sea realm, but later found that the new generation replaced the old. Chu Shunhua was eliminated in front of her, so she couldn't say anything. Jiang Wang said, why don't we first find the path of God descent and go to Withered South Abyss to take a look? Since there are clues to the 9 Phoenix chapter there, we shouldn't ignore it. Maybe there is a way to go around the 9 Phoenix feather to find clues. Zhuguangshu obviously knew that Jiang Wang was thinking for him, but he still refused. Even the south is withering there. It can be seen how dangerous withered South Abyss is. Without the protection of the 9 Phoenix feather, and without any definite clues, the danger is too great, and the rewards are too small. This is not the right decision. Brother Jiang, don't think too much about me. Let's wait for the heaven collapse to arrive, enter the central mountain, and try our luck with the 9 jade disc. How much time do we have before the heaven collapse happens? Jiang Wang asked. Zhuguangshu shook his head. There is no fixed time for the heaven collapse. We only know that it will happen, but we don't know when it will happen. If the heaven collapse happens in 6 to 10 hours, then it's fine. If there are 3 to 5 days, 8 to 9 days, Jiang Wang said, it's a waste for you and me to wait for such a long time. If we just want to find a place to cultivate while waiting, why did we come to the Mountain Sea realm? Moreover, the Mountain Sea realm has already undergone an immeasurable change. No one knows the cause of this change, and our past experience is no longer applicable. If we don't think of a way to uncover the truth and just wait for the heaven collapse, then, when the crisis comes, we can only be at the mercy of others. Jiang Wang patted Zhuguangshu's shoulder. I made this decision not only for your sake. Since there are clues to the 9 Phoenix chapter in Withered South Abyss, and the chapter is so important, I think Withered South Abyss is also a very important place in the Mountain Sea realm. Maybe it has the answer to the changes in the Mountain Sea realm. If we don't enter the abyss, how can we understand it? Benefactor Jiang is right. Yu Tiannu clasped his hands and said, as the saying goes, if I don't enter hell, who will? The more difficult and dangerous the place, the more we have to go. Jiang Wang said, it's not as dangerous as you say. We have the 9 jade disc. If we don't see it right, we can find a chance to leave early. Zhuguangshu still hesitated, but no buts. Jiang Wang interrupted, do you have a better choice? If you do, I'll listen to you. If not, the current choice is the best choice. Just walk forward. Zhuguangshu couldn't speak. At this time, Yu Tiannu said, Nanwu treasured Moonlight Buddha, the will of heaven is the will of Buddha. Benefactor Zhang's words are very Buddhist. He didn't know what was wrong with this puppet Zen master. Why did he suddenly become a bit too supportive? Jiang Wang pondered for a moment and said, I'm thinking, if the Mountain Sea realm is the test left by Huang Weizhen, then the 9 jade discs have disappeared. Now that the 9 phoenixes have disappeared and the North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain is empty, will the test to obtain the 9 Phoenix chapter change? Zhuguangshu was also stunned. The answer to this question might point to the truth of this world. Yu Tiannu clasped his hands together, his face glowing with Buddhist light. Taking advantage of the truth to achieve enlightenment, we cultivators should use this as proof. Benefactor Jiang said it so well. Everyone knew Tathagata, but how many people really knew Tathagata? Yu Tiannu's background was too complicated. He definitely wasn't just a junior disciple of the Cleansing Moon Nunnery. Jiang Wang thought for a moment and asked, is it true that the Cleansing Moon Nunnery doesn't accept male disciples? Yu Tiannu's eyes had a rare trace of ridicule. He said slowly, if Benefactor Jiang is willing, it's not impossible to make an exception. Jiang Wang's face was serious. The Cleansing Moon Nunnery is a famous sect with an ancient heritage. How could I dare to tarnish Baoshan's reputation? If you consider this, sexual characteristics aren't a problem. For example, my puppet body is sexless. Yu Tiannu said very calmly, there are many ways. Jiang Wang laughed dryly, Zen master, you really know how to joke. Guangshu. He hurriedly said, there's no time to lose. Let's discuss how to get to the road of God's descent as soon as possible. Some things couldn't be said clearly at this time. but waiting without doing anything was not his style. Withered South Abyss might have an answer, or it might not. He had to try before he was satisfied. Chapter 1465. As the name suggested, the path of god descent was a path that only mountain gods and sea gods could take. To and fro the mountains and seas, one could pass through the east and west. The Records of Strange Beasts of Mountains and Seas was a very interesting book. Most of the information recorded in the book was like a description of the history of the mountain and sea realm. Most of the information recorded in the book could be found in the mountain and sea realm. Among the descriptions that could be found in the mountain sea territory, and those that could not be found, there was also a portion that could be traced back to the ancient history of the modern world. Of course, there were also some legends that had never been seen anywhere and were unknown to be true or false. Therefore, there were always some people who believed that the mountain sea realm was actually a small world that had split off from the main realm in some ancient era. Because there were no humans, it retained its historical appearance. Of course, this theory was not as popular as the theory of the outer world and the theory of Huang Weijian's creation. In the legends recorded in the records of the strange beasts of the mountains and seas, the mountain gods and sea gods who were stationed in different places visited each other and played the mountains and seas through this path of god descent. Later on, the heavens fell and the earth cracked, and this road was cut off. As a result, the mountain gods and sea gods from all over the world stopped coming and going. Finding this path was originally a difficult matter. But it just so happened that Jiang Wang had already obtained the inheritance from Zhang Yi Mountain, so he knew the location of the mountain god wall. And that happened to be the key door to the path of God's descent. Because the mountain god of the North Pole, Heavenly Cabinet Mountain, had already disappeared, the mountain god wall would not appear at all. Thus, it would not be able to connect to the road of god descent. In other words, one had to be in a place where the mountain god or the sea god resided. Only then would one have the chance to pass through the mountain god's wall or the sea god's wall and step onto the legendary Rainbow Bridge. None of those strange beasts that had been given divine names were easy to deal with. If they rashly invaded the mountain, the possibility of their entire army being wiped out was not small. Jiang Wang thought about it for a long time and finally decided to bring his men back to Mount Zhangji. After all, it was better to do things with experience than to do things with experience. Although it was difficult to determine the location of the mountain sea realm, Jiang Wang could still find the way to the places he had been to before. The mechanical Kuroja did not stop, dutifully bringing the three of them to their destination, but because its size was too eye-catching, it had been put away long ago. Zhangji's Mountain, the quality of jade. The gems and white jade all over the mountain were obviously very attractive. Looking at the hovering mountain, even Zhuo Guangshu said, "The mountain god of this mountain must be extraordinary. Although that five-tailed evil Zheng's temper is not very good, I think that if the three of us work together, we will still be able to reason with it." Jiang Wang didn't know if he was comforting himself or the other two. In short, he casually said a few words of encouragement and then led the group up the mountain secretly. Of course, Jiang Wang didn't dare to show his face in front of Big Head Zheng. This time was different from the previous time. Now that they were very familiar with Zhang Zhaoshan, Yu Tiannu and Zhuo Guangshu displayed their profound knowledge, stacking many concealment techniques to deal with various situations. The three of them were like a gentle breeze, brushing past Zhangzong Mountain without leaving a trace. He didn't take any unnecessary paths and rushed to the mountain god rampart with a clear goal. What was worth rejoicing over was that Big Head Zheng was not guarding this place. Presumably, it was hiding somewhere to sleep. Why is this mountain god wall so bumpy? Yu Tiannu frowned and examined it. There is a big piece missing. Zhuo Guangshu smiled and said, "It's as if you've been robbed." Jiang Wang's expression did not change. "Let's get down to business." The three of them activated their Tao techniques almost at the same time. The entire Zhangzong mountain became lively in an instant. A large flock of flame sparrows chirped and flew around the mountain. The three puppet martial monks each held a wrought iron rod and separated in a direction, recklessly tearing apart the stone forest. There was also a large amount of water flowing into the mountain. The water separated and turned into dragons, tigers, pigs, and leopards, running around everywhere. In the blink of an eye, the mountain was already bustling with noise, everywhere was chaotic. Presumably, the five-tailed Yizheng woke up from its sleep and was stunned for a while, not knowing where to start. Other than that, the three of them also set up many Tao techniques and traps on the path that the five-tailed Yizheng had to take to reach the mountain god rampart. Of course, they couldn't really stop Yizheng, they just needed to divert its attention and slow it down a little. According to their plan, when the commotion started, the three of them immediately broke out of their concealment and flew in front of the mountain god rampart. Jiang Wang casually made a Baifeng seal and pressed it on the mountain god rampart. According to Zhuo Guangshu's instructions, using the name of Zhangzong, he opened up the path of God's descent. The snow-white jade wall instantly shone with brilliant colors, and a holy aura descended. A long rainbow appeared in the sky, piercing through the clouds for thousands of miles, crossing the Zhangzong mountain and traversing the high sky. No one knew where it started and where it ended. In the middle of the mountain god rampart, a door appeared. It was ancient and had beast patterns inscribed on it. Jiang Wang stretched out his hand and pressed on the side of the door, saying anxiously, "You guys go in first." Zhuo Guangshu and Yu Tiannu didn't say anything, pushing the door open and entering. Jiang Wang followed closely behind, igniting the true samadhi fire and burning a large piece of jade wall, quickly keeping it in the storage box. He slammed his body behind the door. Behind the door was a rainbow bridge. It was colorful, deep in the clouds. The power of the mountain god rampart connected the path of God's descent, which also led to the various divine residences. Jiang Wang thought, maybe this is the correct way to travel in the mountain sea realm. But how many people could kill the Baifeng, obtain the essence blood, and connect the mountain god rampart? The restriction of cultivation in the mountain sea realm made this path a castle in the air for outsiders. Zhuo Guangshu originally planned to rely on the feather of the nine phoenix to step on the path of God's descent, so the North Pole Heavenly Cabinet Mountain was his expected starting point. This kind of plan was broken at the first link, but it could still be connected in this way. It was really strange. The wind blew, but it couldn't move the people on the Rainbow Bridge. Stepping on the Rainbow Bridge, Zhuo Guangshu's expression was a little strange. Yu Tiannu, who had a puppet face, didn't have any expression, but her eyes were shining. Obviously, they didn't miss Jiang Wang's random act of digging for treasures. "If we don't destroy this door, I'm worried that Yizheng will catch up," Jiang Wang explained naturally and then commanded, "Look at the road, Guangshu, why are you looking at me? Do I have a map of withered South Abyss on my face?" After all, Brother Jiang was still dignified. Zhuo Guangshu obediently turned around and focused on searching for the divine residence of the withered South Abyss in the shuttle-like scene. On the rainbow bridge that hung high in the sky, one's feet didn't move, but one's body moved with the rainbow bridge as fast as lightning, passing by mountains and seas. This was a very novel experience. The rainbow bridge's speed was too astonishing. In the mountain sea realm, there was a very long distance between each floating mountain. Even if the floating mountains were within sight, it wasn't that easy to reach. As the saying goes, looking at a mountain is running a horse to death. However, standing on the rainbow bridge, the floating mountains seemed to be close to each other as they flew past in front of one's eyes. Sea areas with divine residences were constantly receding from his line of sight. But what shocked Jiang Wang even more was, If every floating mountain and sea area on the path of God's descent represented one or two mountain gods and sea gods, there were too many strange beasts in the mountain-sea realm that had been given divine names. Did Qi have so many gods' descent masters? Did the entire eastern region have them? Only at this moment, the number of mountain gods and sea gods was displayed in front of him in such a direct manner. Only then did Jiang Wang realize that if the mountain-sea realm was a real world, it was actually such a powerful world. "We're here," Zhuo Guangshu suddenly said. The rainbow bridge stopped. Jiang Wang looked up and saw a dark vortex hovering in front of him. Yu Tianyu walked forward, and golden light bloomed on her body bit by bit. "I'll go in first." She only said this one sentence and stepped into the vortex. Withering South Abyss was filled with danger. She knew that her puppet body was stronger than Jiang Wang's, so she went in first to scout the way. Other than that, she didn't say anything else. Jiang Wang followed closely behind and stepped into the dark vortex. His entire body suddenly relaxed. Jiang Wang almost floated up. In the mountain sea realm, he had to endure Chongshuan's power that was 100 times stronger than in the main world. In fact, he was already used to it. In this withering South Abyss, Chongshuan's power almost didn't exist. It was as if he was in the void of the universe. Under the sudden rise and fall, he almost couldn't stand steadily. Jiang Wang immediately circulated his strength and lowered his body. However, in the next moment, the Chongshuan's power that was pressing down on him increased by 100 times, as if it was going to crush him into a pancake. Fiery red smoke rose from his body. Jiang Wang immediately activated the supreme smoke armor. This Dao technique, created by Zhuo Guangshu, was really suitable for this extremely chaotic Chongxian environment. His Dao essence was consumed violently, but he could stand steadily. Only then did he have time to size up the environment around him. Since he descended from the path of God's descent, everywhere he went would be a god's residence. In other words, there must be a mountain god or sea god guarding it. The best situation was that the god was not at home. However, this kind of expectation was better than nothing. According to the plan of the three of them, the first thing they had to do after descending was to hide. However, they couldn't care so much at this time. If they couldn't even stand steadily, they couldn't hide. Yu Tianyu was not far in front of them. The golden light on her body kept changing. Obviously, she had adapted to the environment. As someone who could become a Pure Land, she knew more about the world. It would be easier for her to deal with these things than Jiang Wang. "I haven't found anything yet," Yu Tianyu said. "But we have to leave quickly. The gods here must have heard the commotion and were on their way." Jiang Wang turned around. Behind him was a pitch-black mountain god wall. A door opened in the middle. Zhuo Guangshu was walking out from it. "Hurry up and take a look. Do you recognize it?" Jiang Wang threw a question directly to the Cloud-Top Immortal Palace, asking Cloud-Child to analyze the material composition of this mountain god wall. After a while, Cloud-Child's listless response came. The immortal scripture states that if the sea god dies, his divine body will become quicksand. 10,000 years of light will become wood. Immortal Master, this is quicksand wood, one of the main materials of the Immortal Palace's strongman. Jiang Wang was overjoyed. He couldn't wait to summon the true Samadhi fire and burn it to his heart's content. Fortunately, he still had some sense. He knew that if he burned it, things would get worse. Therefore, he forcibly suppressed his desire to try out the seed of divine power. Zhuo Guangshu walked out of the dark door. He quickly sensed the complexity of the environment. Light blue smoke rose from his body. In an instant, he completed his resistance. Facing Jiang Wang's burning gaze, he couldn't help but say, "Brother Jiang, you're making me nervous." Jiang Wang thought, "Move away and you'll know what I'm looking at." He was only one step away from the Immortal Palace's strongman. How could he not be excited? He gritted his teeth and turned to leave. "Let's hurry up and leave. We'll come back after we figure out the situation. Speaking of which, the material of the Immortal Palace's strongman was really strange. It was either formed after the death of a mountain god or a sea god within the mountain sea realm. Mountain gods and sea gods might be different. But in the modern realm, they were all related to the divine Tao. The cloud-top Immortal Palace was no longer stepping on the heads of the divine Tao and abusing them. They were completely flaying the divine Tao and stepping on the corpses of the divine Tao to develop. From this point alone, one could almost see the grandeur of the 9 great immortal palaces in the past. One had to know that the divine Tao wasn't some narrow path, let alone weak. Let's not talk about the glorious era. Even now, when everything was in decline, there was still a hegemon state bathed in the divine light of the Tsang-Tu god. This hegemon state was still deploying its troops and rolling up its sleeves to fight a great battle with the Jing state. Without some ability, how could the cloud-top Immortal Palace dare to act like this? Brother Jiang, Zhuo Guangshu said, when we leave, we can go somewhere else. There's no need to come back. No. We have to come back. Jiang Wang was resolute and decisive. Seeing Zhuo Guangshu's stunned expression, he softened his tone. We'll leave from where we came from. When young people do things, there must be a beginning and an end. Zhuo Guangshu nodded in a daze. Although he didn't understand how there could be a beginning and an end. But a person like Brother Jiang must have his reasons, right? The 3 of them had a tacit understanding. After observing the environment, they were about to leave. But almost at the same time, they stopped and took a step. Right in front of them, a huge, strange rock cracked open. To be more precise, it was the dirt that had accumulated on the body of a strange beast. It was unknown how many years it had accumulated. At this moment it exploded and poured down. An invisible but substantial pressure came surging over, covering the sky and covering the earth. What appeared in front of them was a strange beast with a chaotic aura. It had the head of a dog, the body of a bear, 4 legs, and long hair all over its body. Its eyes were very big, but they were dim and lifeless. It was as if it couldn't see anything. Its 2 round ears drooped down. It shouldn't be able to hear anything because Jiang Wang didn't detect any sound flowing through its ears. Its abdomen was bulging. Its belly was very thin and translucent. One could vaguely see a rectum leading to the end, but the shadow of its internal organs couldn't be seen. Just by looking at its appearance, it didn't seem like a fierce, strange beast. But its strength didn't need to be proven. The golden light on Yu Tianu's body, Jiang Wang's unshielded smoke armor on Zhuo Guangshu's body, were directly crushed under this terrifying pressure. When one was unlucky, even cold water would be stuck in one's teeth. He didn't expect the sea god of withered South Abyss to be fixed on the opposite side of the sea god's wall. As long as he slept somewhere else, he would still have a chance to escape. Why was it so different from Zhangji Mountain? As the one who had dealt with the mountain god and sea god the most among the 3, Jiang Wang stood up without hesitation. On one hand, he covered his body with Tao essence to resist the unpredictable power of Chongxian in withered South Abyss. On the other hand, he patted himself and pointed at the other party. He laughed and said, "Me? You, friend." This was a communication method that had been tested by Hua Dou and by Fang. It was very effective. Zhuo Guangshu's confidence in Jiang Wang was almost blind. He looked at the other side with anticipation. But the sea god of withered South Abyss didn't move or say anything. The silence lasted for a while. "Get ready to escape," Jiang Wang said helplessly. "It's blind and deaf. Even if I do something, I can't communicate with it." "How do we escape?" Zhuo Guangshu, whose smoke armor was crushed by the pressure, didn't dare to move. "I feel like I'll die if I move my ankle," Jiang Wang said calmly. "Listen to my command later. Zen Master Yu, use the puppet to entangle this ugly thing. Guangshu, use the water element to create a barrier and divide the battlefield. I'll cut open the path for you. When I count to 3, we'll attack together. I am chaos. The strange beast suddenly opened its mouth and said, not called ugly thing. It was speaking the language of Tao. One could understand its meaning by listening to its voice. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.